voastră ce e aici, bă? Mamă,
The Driscoll Hotel in Austin is rumored to be alive with the ghosts of the past who reveal themselves to guests of the present. Colonel Jesse Driscoll opened the luxurious hotel in 1886. The wealthy cattle baron bought the corner lot of Brazos and 6th Street for $7,500. The Driscoll has welcomed high society events and historic political events over the years. In 1934, Lyndon Baines Johnson met his future wife, Lady Bird, at the Driscoll. He later used the hotel as his headquarters for the White House press corps. Today, guests say the hotel is haunted by Colonel Driscoll's spirit. He was known as an avid cigar smoker, and at times guests report the smell of cigar smoke despite the fact the hotel has been smoke-free for several years. They also say Colonel Driscoll has a fascination with lights. It could happen by his portrait or anywhere in the hotel. It's very likely Colonel Driscoll is checking in on his property. Among the stories of the Driscoll is the legend of Peter Lawless. He was a railroad man who lived at the Driscoll for 31 years until his death in 1917. Some say his spirit still haunts the hotel today. Guests and employees have reported seeing Lawless in hotel lobby elevators. He can often be seen walking out of the elevator, checking his railroad watch, nodding to the staff, and then disappearing. The spirit of a little girl is also said to haunt the Driscoll Hotel. In 1887, 4-year-old Samantha Houston was chasing a bull when she fell to her death on the grand staircase. She was the daughter of a Texas senator. Guests have heard the unexplained laughter of a little girl and the sound of a bouncing ball in different areas of the hotel. Samantha's father paid for someone to paint her portrait shortly after her death. It now hangs on the 5th floor of the Driscoll. Some say she tries to communicate through it. People say once in a while you can catch her giving a smile and her expression will change in the painting. These mysterious happenings are why the Driscoll is known as the most haunted hotel in Texas. It attracts guests looking to encounter visitors from the other side. They are playful, mischievous, very quirky sense of humor when it comes to playing little tricks on people. Coming in at number 5, we have La Fonda on the Plaza in Santa Fe, New Mexico. In the historic district of Santa Fe, New Mexico sits the historic La Fonda Hotel. This old hotel has been providing a pillow for weary travelers since 1922. The location itself has been called home to some kind of inn or fonda since Santa Fe's earliest days. When Santa Fe was founded in 1607, records show that an inn on this location was one of the first businesses established in the new settlement. According to local law, court was held in the original Adobe Hotel, as well as executions, when guilty offenders were hanged in the lobby. Over the years, the hotel was destroyed and rebuilt several times over. As more and more pioneers traveled the Santa Fe Trail, the La Fonda became a popular destination for trappers, traders, mountain men, soldiers, politicians, and the like. The gambling hall continued to be a major feature, however, providing entertainment for military officers and the occasional professional gambler. Fortunes were made and lost here, and one unfortunate person lost his life in 1857 at the end of a rope strung up in the hotel's backyard by a lynch mob. 10 years later, in 1867, the John P. Slough, Chief Justice of the Territorial Supreme Court, was fatally shot in the hotel lobby. Slough was in a dispute with Captain Ryneson, a member of the territorial legislature, when he called Ryneson a liar and a thief. More than a century ago, a distraught salesman who lost his company's money in a card game leaped down a deep well that was located just outside the gambling hall of the Exchange Hotel. Most of the history of the hotel is strung together by a string of tragedies. The hotel has seen more than its fair share of violence and anger. Today, the La Fonda Hotel is said to host not only travelers visiting Santa Fe but also several ghosts. Some people believe that Judge Slough continues to walk its hallways. However, more often reported is the ghost of the distraught salesman who jumped into the well after losing all of his company's money. The hotel's dining room, called the La Plazuela, is situated directly over the old well, and both guests and staff alike have reported the sight of a ghostly figure that walks to the center of the room, then seemingly jumps into the floor and disappears. In the 1970s, a guest reportedly called the front desk to complain that someone was walking up and down the hallway in front of his room. When an employee was sent to investigate, he saw a tall man in a long black coat disappear into a stairwell. However, when he followed him to the stairs, there was no sign of the mysterious visitor. Today, the La Fonda Hotel is a vibrant historic landmark on Santa Fe's downtown plaza, known for its award-winning architecture and decor unique artwork. Guests don't appear to be put off by the spirits that still live there, with some staying there in hopes of encountering a lost spirit. In at number 3, we have Hotel Chelsea in New York City. city. The Hotel Chelsea has been a formidable presence on the West 23rd Street since the 1880s, taking up a large section of the block between 7th and 8th Avenues. Over the past decades, the hotel has become a shell of its former self, as ownership has changed hands. We've seen its legendary walls enshrouded in scaffolding, and long-time residents leave as the building is transformed into luxury hotels. A list of notable building residents have called the Hotel Chelsea home, from authors like Mark Twain, Dylan Thomas, as well as Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey there. There is no other building in NYC that has been the home, the muse, and the inspiration for multiple generations of artists. Opened in 1884 as an experiment by architect Philip Hubert, Hotel Chelsea was Manhattan's first cooperative building that catered to the personal and professional needs of inhabitants. It was a social experiment of sorts for a mix of the carpenters, electricians, and interior designers who created the place, in addition to a handful of artists, writers, and singers. From its inception, the 12-story building was a haven for creative types, and it didn't take long for the walls of the common spaces, which at time included dining halls, to become decorated with canvases and murals, some of which were created by the esteemed students of the Hudson River School. But Hubert's social experiment quickly went bankrupt and belly up. In 1905, Hotel Chelsea opened its doors to the world, offering luxury accommodations on Manhattan's West 23rd Street. A few decades later, after plenty of wear and tear, management was forced to lower room prices to mirror the condition of the rooms. During its glittering peak, day-to-day life at Hotel Chelsea was far from glamorous. Tenants would gather to smoke and drink in the hallways of the Victorian Gothic building. Drug use was rampant, and someone was always accidentally setting something on fire. The hotel shuttered to visitors in 2011, and after a series of unsuccessful acquisitions, was ultimately purchased 5 years later by a trio of hoteliers: Richard Bourne and Ira Druckier of BD Hotels, and Sean McPherson of Bowery Hotel and Jane Hotel. The new owners are in the midst of doing a thorough renovation of the ailing space, planned to reopen it in 2019 as a glittering luxury destination. With the hotel's long and complicated history full of every type of person, there have been spirits that have been trapped within the walls. Nancy Spungen, girlfriend of Sid Vicious of the Sex Pistols, was found stabbed on October 12, 1978. She was found on the hotel bathroom floor by the staff. She did not survive her attack. Sid was charged with her murder but died before he could be convicted. The next tragedy that is considered to be quite popular when it comes to the Hotel Chelsea is that of poet and writer named Dylan Marlays Thomas. This occurred many years earlier than Nancy's, on the 9th day of November in the year 1953. In October of 1953, Mr. Thomas arrived in the state of New York, and according to those around him, he had wealth and medical problems. Many claim that he had suffered from regular blackouts and even suffered from medical conditions associated with his heart. In addition to these issues, he also had to carry an inhaler because of the fact that he suffered from a respiratory condition. He became ill during his stay at the hotel. He passed away 3 days later from pneumonia. However, some people believe he was poisoned. Both Nancy and Dylan, along with other lesser-known ghosts, are known to plague their own rooms within the hotel. Some guests have heard screaming from Nancy's bathroom when staying in the neighboring rooms, or waking up suddenly in the night. Others have heard footsteps from outside the rooms, along with running up and down the halls. Currently, renovations continue as of April 2021, with a plan to reopen by the end of the year. Will you visit once the hotel is reopened? Will the renovations make a difference to the hauntings? Probably not. In at number 2, we have Hawthorne Hotel in Salem, Massachusetts. The Hotel Hawthorne has been one of the most cherished landmarks in Salem for a century. The hotel was a joint venture for the town, looking to build their first hotel to service visitors. They decided to name the hotel after author Nathaniel Hawthorne, who grew up in the town. Opening in July of 1925, the new magnificent destination offered 150 outstanding guest rooms, as well as a 2-story lobby complete with a mezzanine and balcony. It even attracted series of illustrious guests, including the likes of Betty Davis and Johnny Cash, but it was the television sitcom Bewitched that brought the Hawthorne Hotel its greatest fame. In 1970, Elizabeth Montgomery, her real-life husband Bill Asher, and the rest of the cast and crew stayed at the Hawthorne Hotel while filming episodes for the show. The hotel was flooded with calls asking if it was the Bewitched Hotel for years after the Salem saga first aired. Bridget Bishop was one of the poor women accused and convicted of witchcraft, was said to have owned an apple orchard upon which the hotel was later built. Many guests maintain that they have encountered her very spirit within the hotel. In front of the 6th floor's room 612, the apparition of a woman is often seen standing still. From time to time, she will wander up and down the hallway where room 612 is located. Within the room, guests have complained of the sensation that they are not alone, as if someone else is sharing the room with them. And inside room 325 of the 3rd floor, there have been several reports of hearing an unseen baby crying, lights turning off and on, and even the water faucets turning on and off. Others have reported numerous unidentifiable sounds. One particular employee refuses to work nights ever again. During his evening shift, after cleaning a room, he went to get supplies and returned to find the room's entire configuration changed around. With the hotel being built in Salem, there is no telling just how many tortured women still roam on the land, all dying in horrific ways their spirits have struggled to pass on and accept their fate. And lastly, in at number 1 we have the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. The Rocky Mountains are home to a hotel that's widely considered one of the most haunted places in America, and it has ties to a renowned horror film. The Stanley Hotel in Colorado is said to be haunted by several different ghosts, from past owners to children and even a couple pets. Along with its haunted reputation, the colonial revival style hotel also inspired author Stephen King to write The Shining, one of his most popular novels that was adapted into a 1980 film starring Jack Nicholson. The Stanley Hotel was built by inventor Freeland Stanley, who moved out to Colorado hoping that the fresh air and plentiful sunlight would relieve his tuberculosis. When he arrived in 1903, he was weak and underweight, but after just one season, hotel staff says his health was restored. The hotel says Stanley was so overjoyed that he vowed to return each summer and ended up building the hotel to bring a level of sophistication to the region. The Stanley Hotel opened in 1909. Stanley died in 1940 at the age of 91, but his spirit is still said to roam the hotel. Specifically, staff says he's been spotted in the hotel's billiard room and bar. Stanley's wife Flora has also reportedly been spotted in the hotel and is known to tickle the keys of a piano. Another ghost that's been said to show up is a former housekeeper of the hotel, Elizabeth Wilson, or Mrs. Wilson. Tour guides say Wilson was lighting lanterns in room 217 when she was seriously injured in an explosion. She survived the blast but passed away years later. Now it seems Wilson is a regular in room 217. Guests report items being moved, luggage being packed up, and lights going off and on. It also seems Wilson is rather conservative. Guides say she's not a fan of unmarried couples. People who aren't married have reported feeling cold presence between them while in bed. On the 4th floor, guests have also reported hearing children running around, laughing and playing. Guides say that's where nannies and kids they watched would spend much of their time back in the day. Not all of the hotel's purported ghosts stand on two legs. There's a pet cemetery on the grounds that guides say is the final resting place of some of the owner's animals. Staff says the ghosts of a cat and a dog have been roaming around. Could this cemetery also be the inspiration for King's novel Pet Sematary? It definitely seems possible. Guides end their tour in a cave system below the hotel, where staff says there's a higher than average concentration of limestone and quartz, which is believed by some to draw spirits to the property. Do you dare visit the Shining Hotel?
In 5th place, we have Preston Castle, also known as the Preston School of Industry in Ione. Opening in 1894 and named after state senator at the time, Edward Myers Prestonas, it was presented as an alternative to juvie, a place to send troubled boys to learn a new trade and avoid incarceration. To the general public, it quickly became known as the best reform school of its kind, where boys could grow their own food, raise livestock, learn farming trades and skills for self-preservation in the real world. Known as wards, minors under guardianship of the state, but not necessarily juvenile offenders, many boys passed from severe illnesses like tuberculosis or were simply killed by guards for reasons unknown. Records show that the initiation to the facility involved swimming through a pool filled with lye, and common discipline methods included starvation, isolation, public paddling, and lashings. A mass grave on the property contains at least 23 bodies of wards that were sent to be rehabilitated. Head housekeeper of the facility, Anna Corbin, was brutally beaten to death on February 23rd of 1950. Various students and members of the staff were suspects in her passing, but it remains unsolved. Visitors to the now landmark have reported meeting her spirit, which roams around the grounds with all the students that couldn't pass over. Physical representations of spirits at this location have included multiple slamming doors, falling objects, disembodied voices, and the feeling of being touched by a cold hand. All common pranks that are meant to terrorize and discombobulate. In 4th place, we have the Los Coches Adobe in Soledad. Before the establishment even broke ground, back when the area was used primarily for mining, over 30 miners perished in a soil collapse, and visitors to the area have since reported hearing their cries for help from the now abandoned mine shaft, while feeling pressure on their chest and back as if they were being buried alive. The adobe itself is located on the site of Highway 101. The building being originally built in 1843 to be used as lodging for workers in the area. Between 1872 and 1886, Soledad served as the terminal station for the railway that connected to San Francisco. Legend says that the owner of the inn was responsible for ending the lives of multiple folks who stayed there, especially near the end of the inn being in use, by entering the rooms as they slept and slitting their throats before stealing their riches in an attempt to keep the inn, well, afloat. Other spirits spotted on the property include, but are not limited to, a man hanging from a tree, swaying in the wind, and a woman sitting while holding a pointer stick, with her mouth moving as if she's yelling at whoever spots her. It is reported that the wall between the living and the dead is so thin here that people who have stayed in recent history reported having the walls and surroundings inside of the building change them to match the settings of the once deadly inn before their very eyes. Those who have opted to go so far as to stay the night have often woken up with handprints on their chest or throat, a remnant of what came before. In third place, time to visit the Bodie State Historic Park. Formerly a genuine gold mining town located east of the Sierra Nevada mountain range in Mono County, California, and now a national landmark, it is known as one of the best preserved ghost towns in the world. It is named after W.S. Bodie, first name unknown, but rumored to be either William or Waterman, discovered gold in 1859 in an area now known as Brody Bluff. He tragically passed in a snowstorm that same winter and was never present for what came to be. According to pioneer Judge McClinton, the district's name was changed from the proper spelling of B-O-D-E-Y to B-O-D-Y, body, and then a few other phonetic variations to eventually become B-O-D-I-E after a painter in the nearby boomtown of Aurora lettered a sign as such. You know, an accidental typo that stuck through history. While the output from the mine is largely insignificant in terms of mining history, the violence and early endings to lives tell a different story. A particularly harsh winter between 1878 and 1879 claimed hundreds of lives, with many others perishing from falling timber and explosions underground. Bodie as a town grew to have a reputation for violence and lawlessness, and unlike other mining camps at the time, killings were daily events. Robberies, stage holdups, and fights happened at such a frequency that no complete record could be kept. Reverend F.M. Warrington would describe the area in 1881 as a sea of sin lashed by the tempests of lust and passion. The first of 4 mysterious fires tore through the business district in 1892, the next destroying the town mill in 1912, and yet another destroying the same mill again in 1898. The last of the unknown fires demolished most of what was left of the now ghost town in 1932, taking way too many lives too soon in the process. When the last producing mine shut down after 1945, very few people were left living in what was left of the town, and all eventually met untimely ends. One man shot his wife unprompted, and 3 other men from the town took it upon themselves to take his life for that act. According to historians, the ghost of that man would visit the 3 men after his passing, shaking his fist and appearing as if he was cursing them out. Those men soon died of mysterious diseases and illnesses. Visitors to the area have reported meeting spirits that leave them feeling suffocated, seeing doors open and close on their own, and rocking chairs that may or may not have a menacing older lady staring them down, or even the empty chair rocking on its own. Nowadays, Bodie may be a tourist destination, but if you remove anything from the land, even so little as a pebble, you'll be cursed with remorse and tragedy. The park keeps a logbook of all letters and items returned to them, with each thief writing an apology note to Bodie for what was taken. The curse is upheld by the ghosts of residents past who guard against thieves and protect the town's treasures. Coming in second place, we have the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, which was renamed to the Stay on Main in 2011. Cited as one of the inspirations for American Horror Story, Hotel, its history includes multiple deaths by a single hand and more unexplainable horrors. The first documented end of life at the Cecil occurred on the evening of January 22, 1927, when Percy Ormond Cook, age 52 at the time, shot himself in the head while inside his hotel room after spending over $40,000 in an attempt to woo back his estranged wife and an attempt to buy happiness. The next death that was reported was in 1931 when a guest, W.K. Norton, passed in his room after taking poison capsules. Too many lives to list were self-taken at the height of the Great Depression in the 40s and 50s. In 1947, it was claimed that Elizabeth Short, otherwise known as the Black Dahlia, was spotted at the hotel days before her gruesome and unsolved end of time. On the topic of unsolved deaths, we move ahead to 1964 when a retired telemarketer named Pigeon Goldie Osgood, who had been a well-known long-term resident at the hotel, was found brutally ended in her room, with said room having been ransacked. In the 1980s, the hotel was home for a few weeks to repeated ender of lives Richard Ramirez, nicknamed the Night Stalker. It's assumed that he engaged in most, if not all of his killing spree while staying there, being convicted of 13 deaths total in 1989. A copycat of his, Jack Unterweger, stayed at the Cecil in 1991 and was responsible for the strangulation and death of at least 3 women of the night. The most recent death reported took place in 2013 when surveillance footage of Canadian student Elisa Lam behaving erratically in the hotel's elevator went viral. The video depicts Lam repeatedly pressing the elevator's buttons, walking in and out of the elevator, and was recorded shortly before her disappearance. After 19 days of being missing, her naked body was discovered in a water supply cistern on the hotel roof, following complaints from guests of odd-tasting water and low pressure. And finally, in first place, we have the famed Winchester Mystery House in San Jose. It all began in 1881 when the passing of Sarah Winchester's mother, father-in-law, and husband William Winchester of the famed Winchester Repeating Arms Company passed away in quick succession, leaving her with a very large inheritance, assumed to be around $20 million, which would amount to roughly $561.6 million today, and a 50% stake in the company, making her one of the wealthiest women at the time. After living in Connecticut for the majority of her life, a combination of an arthritis diagnosis and meeting with a medium convinced her to start a new life in California. She believed her family to be cursed by victims of the Winchester rifle, and began construction on what was originally a 2-story, 8-room farmhouse, which she purchased in 1886. She and her late husband shared an interest in architecture, and after dismissing all of the architects she originally met with, decided to do all of the home planning herself. She was known to rebuild and abandon construction if anything didn't meet her expectations, which resulted in a maze-like design. It is believed that said maze-like design was mainly intended to confuse and keep spirits from harming her and what was left of her family. According to paranormal investigators Mary Jo Ignofo and Joe Nickel, the bell tower built on the property was used to summon spirits, and Sarah was known to throw lavish parties for the beings she feared in an attempt to please them. It was reported in the San Jose News in 1897 that a 7-story tower was torn down and rebuilt 16 times. As a result of her expansions, there are walled-off exterior windows and doors that lead to nowhere, along with staircases that end suddenly, and as the house grew in size, up to 5 additional levels were added to the home. When the 1906 San Francisco earthquake hit, the damage to the home was quite extensive. The 7-story tower and most of the chimneys collapsed. An entire wing was destroyed, along with the 3rd and 4th story additions, and pipes that were protruding from what were once window boxes. Before the earthquake, the house is believed to have had 500 rooms, and at this time of Sarah's passing in 1922, the house had 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 stairways, 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, and 6 kitchens. Visitors to the house today have reported multiple instances of experiencing cold spots, footsteps, cooking smells, odd sounds, whispering, doors and windows slamming, and feelings of being watched.
Number 5. The Lexington. If you're a Texas native, then you probably don't need much introduction to the USS Lexington. Formerly known as the Blue Ghost, the decommissioned aircraft carrier now stands as a museum, and it's thought by some to hold a lot more than some old war relics and stories. It might just contain some old souls who've never quite left its service. The museum's director of operations, Charles Russell, claims that the museum receives hundreds upon hundreds of reports of supernatural and inexplicable activity and sightings every single year. Most famous among them is a benevolent ghost dressed in a sailor's uniform who aids guests in finding their way around the ship before vanishing back into the air. He describes one particularly vivid encounter with a spirit inhabiting his office where, after losing 6 pens over the course of a week, he found all of them arranged perfectly, laying side by side in front of his keyboard. He reassures visitors that the spirits who live aboard the Lexington are playful, not frightful. They're more like Casper in that regard, I guess. Other stories tell sightings and reports of hearing lost souls running for cover after a torpedo attack, describing running sounds and other strange noises in the hangar bay. The paranormal tour guide aboard the Lexington describes it as, this was their home and they don't want to go anywhere else. I kinda get it, you know? I'd want to live on an aircraft carrier, that seems pretty cool. I'd try to swing that as long as I could. Like most purportedly haunted locations, if finding something spooky in the cold steel of the Lexington truly interests you, the museum offers a paranormal investigation tour, where guests can spend the night with their own equipment in the hopes of finding someone to trip up your EVP meter. And if that ain't enough for you and you're looking for something spooky from the confines of your own home, well, we can hook you up with that real easy. Click through on Top 5 Scary because we've got loads of videos about haunted spots, ghosts, ghouls, goblins, aliens, cryptids, conspiracies, and just about anything freaky you can think up. Stay subscribed, stay scared, but, you know, stay watching this video as well, okay? we worked hard. Number 4. Le Carafe. Le Carafe up in Houston looks unassuming at first. Looks like a pretty typical dive bar experience. Looks nice though, I definitely would like to go. But if you believe the rumors, allegedly this is one of the most haunted buildings in the entire state. The bar also is one of the oldest buildings in Texas as well, having been initially built sometime in the early 1800s. It's seen life as quite a few things: a pharmacy, an apothecary, a bakery, and eventually Le Carafe. So it's not too surprising that in all of its years of service, picked up a few guests who aren't ready to pay the bill and leave just yet. Many regular customers have a ghost story to tell you, as well as the bartenders. Many report strange noises, a glass breaking mysteriously, some even seeing lipstick stains on a glass they're drinking from appear out of nowhere. Do ghosts have germs? Is it safe to share a drink with a ghost? I don't know if I would do that unless we got to know each other a bit first, and then hey, anything can happen. I'm open. The bar is said to be haunted by a former tender named Carl, who frequent guests claim they can hear shouting out for last call still years after passing the bar. Some claim they can see Carl's silhouette through a second-floor window. Another ghost said to haunt the premises is the Lady in White, who supposedly pushed attractive women down the stairs. Hardly a way to get them to like you, let me tell you from experience. She's thought to be the ghost of a woman who ran a cat house near the Carafe. Believers say that they see orbs and mist in photos and feel cold spots all over. I guess you could say they serve up more than one kind of spirits. I'll see myself out. I'm sorry, that's not my best work. If you're ever in Houston and looking for a bit of spooky ambiance, definitely check out the Carafe and all of its otherworldly guests. Just make sure to tip your ghost about 15%. Number 3. The Driscoll Hotel. The Driscoll Hotel is another shining spot in the state, said to be a hotbed of paranormal activity. Lone Star State, Lone Scare State, more like. With how many ghosts are said to live in this place, it's hard to imagine that you'd even be able to get a free room. One of the more notable ones is the owner, the cowboy Jesse Driscoll himself, who built the place originally. Shortly after the hotel's construction, it's said that Jesse came under very hard times. So, desperate for money, Jesse gambled away the deed to the hotel in a game of cards, and was forever swallowed by this guilt, losing his cherished prize. It's said his spirit still resides in this hotel, in the room looking out at 6th Street and Brazos. A consultant once reported looking out of the window in this room and seeing a man dressed in old western attire, puffing a cigar, asking, "Hey fella, what are you doing in my room?" When he flicked the lights on and off to make sure he wasn't seeing what he thought he'd seen, the varmint disappeared, leaving behind only a trail of smoke. Another notable ghost guests like to talk about is the Bride, the ghost of a distraught woman who ended her life in the early 1990s after her wedding was called off, as she blew through all her money in a desperate coping attempt. I get it, I get it. Guests say that they see her ghost towing bags up and down the halls of the hotel, still running mad. Now I'll leave you with one last good spooky story out of the Driscoll. There was actually so many for this one. Definitely read up on it at home or visit if you're nearby. It seems like there's a lot going on. There's a painting on the 5th floor. It's a painting of a little girl holding a bouquet of flowers in one hand and a letter in the other. Paranormal enthusiasts claim that this painting is the daughter of a US senator who passed away in a freak accident at the hotel, and her spirit lingers on in the canvas. Guests claim that they can feel something tugging at their coats or legs when they walk on by. Oof, it's a little too interactive for me for an art experience. Number 2, the Oakwood Cemetery. I gotta say, a cemetery is a pretty classical location for something haunted to be happening. I think we all sort of suspect most cemeteries are haunted as is. I mean, a couple thousand dead bodies all buried underneath the same plot makes my hair stand on end. I said I was gonna try not to do a southern drawl, but I swear it's coming on naturally. I'm sorry. Oakwood Cemetery in particular is well known as a haunted spot to those who believe. It was established sometime in the 1850s, though it's thought that earlier settlers were laid to rest there too. With 23,000 souls resting there, it's no surprise that there is a litany of spooky stories amongst the tombstones. Take a listen to some of the more notable ones I dug up for you. One in particular that gets retold is that of Eula Phillips, a young woman who was struck fatally with an axe on Christmas Eve. Not that there's ever a good day for that, but that's a pretty bad one. Her husband was found guilty, only to be exonerated later when it turned out that there was a series of victims all around the same area matching her profile. 8 others who all fell victim to this is unbelievable that any newspaper ever printed this name, the Servant Girl Annihilator. I cannot believe they named him that. I've actually featured him in a video before. I can't quite remember the title of it, but click through on every single top 5 scary video until you find it. There are some theorists who suspect the servant girl annihilator and the infamous Jack the Ripper are one and the same, and that guy just could not get enough traveling from country to country. Some local residents claim that Eula's ghost roams the cemetery, lost, afraid, and panicked, unable to come to terms with the vile means of her death. Another very notable ghost is that of Susanna Dickinson. When Lopez de Santa Anna attacked the Alamo, Susanna and her kin were brought into the garrison. The dust cleared and the battle was over, and Susanna met with Santa Anna, where he offered to take her and her children back to Mexico. But she declined, knowing it might even cost her her life. Surprised, Santa Anna spared her, and her account of the Alamo was crucial to understanding and remembering what happened there. Susanna was buried at a plot in Oakwood, and visitors say she constantly appears to strangers, telling her stories all these years on, still remembering the Alamo. And number 1, Yorktown Memorial Hospital. About 80 miles southeast of San Antonio is Yorktown, a small community with a population that barely exceeds a couple thousand. Probably a good reason for that, because if the legends are to be believed, the hauntings at the Yorktown Memorial Hospital might be keeping people away. The hospital was built in 1951, where it operated for a bit, and was eventually took over by the Felician Sisters of the Roman Catholic Church, who kept the place running until late 1986 when it was abandoned. Where it still sits today, almost as if nothing's happened. It looks like everybody just packed up and left. It's said that over 2,000 people call Yorktown their final resting spot, with 500 of those all occurring during the small tenure of the nuns running the hospital. These days, of course, the hospital's sickly lime green walls don't really see a lot of patients. Mostly just ghost hunters and seekers of the paranormal looking for something lurking left behind. And if the stories are true, this place is filled with restless ghosts. Explorers report everything from disembodied voices to sounds of wheelchairs creaking, mysterious flashes of lights, orbs, mists, cold chills, you know, the usual who's who greatest hits of haunted spots. Now, you don't even need to be told this place is haunted to worry about it. I mean, just look at it. The place looks like it's straight out of Silent Hill, down to the rusted pipes and leaky hallways, but don't fret, no, there are ghosts. One in particular is that of a late surgeon, one Leon Norwirski. He was infamous around the hospital for his sloppy handiwork, and was said to have lost a number of patients in his time, and his spirit as such has been cursed to wander the facilities endlessly. Keeps writing terrifying messages on the wall, but no one can read them because he's a doctor. That's not my best work. I'm really sorry. Some of these should have stayed on the writing board. Another infamous ghost is that of Sally, a young girl who's said to still live in the hospital's halls, heard happily playing, jovially dancing around, and even asking explorers to read her favorite story when she encounters them. I hope someone takes her up on that. Not me though, nothing personal. I just have like a policy about not reading stories to ghosts.
Number 5 on this list is Tranquil Sanatorium in British Columbia. Tranquil Sanatorium has quite an extensive and tragic history to it, which has caused its walls to be the home to many undead spirits. A sanatorium, if you weren't familiar, is an establishment which has the sole purpose of housing those with long-term illnesses and is often associated with tuberculosis. The one that we're talking about right now is no different. It was built in 1907 as a facility to treat people with tuberculosis. However, it didn't stay like this for very long. The purpose of the facility eventually changed to become an insane asylum. It acted as this mental institute for a while until finally becoming abandoned in the late 1980s. Due to its deep history with death, disease, mental illness, it's no wonder that the Tranquil Sanatorium is now deeply haunted. The layout of this facility screams something out of a Stephen King book. It has several buildings that are connected by poorly lit underground tunnels. The building itself looks all too eerie from the outside as well, with dirty cream colored walls that have seen far better days as rot and mold slowly devour them. Visitors of this place report feeling extremely uneasy. A common note for most people that visit is the presence of orbs, strange balls of light that flutter throughout the building and then disappear. Some people have reported seeing a ghostly apparition on the 6th floor. This ghost takes the form of a woman not older than 30. She appears to be crying and screaming. The tunnels are said to be particularly haunted. People have reported screams coming from nowhere, flashes of movement, menacing hissing and animalistic groans that make you feel as if somebody is right behind you. Children can also be heard playing every now and again in some of the more open areas of the building. Clearly, this place's dark history has impacted it greatly, and just because physical humans decided to abandon it in the 80s doesn't mean that it was truly abandoned for good. Number 4 on this list is the Firkins House. The Firkins House is part of Fort Edmonton Park, which, you guessed it, is located in Edmonton, Alberta. Fort Edmonton Park is a little tourist attraction that has buildings from 1885, 1905, and 1920 to represent the homes of the time. One of the houses is the Firkins House. This home is interesting because during my research, I couldn't find any particular evidence of wrongdoings or tragic events at this home. In fact, for the most part, it seems like a pretty normal house. People have lived there before and no harm has befell them, but it seems that after they moved out and the home was donated, that's when things started to go a little bit haywire. There are reportedly 3 ghosts or demons that haunt this home, each one scarier and more dangerous than the next. The first one is the ghost of a beautiful floating woman who is dressed in all white. People have said that they've spotted her in the windows of the home looking out at them or slowly drifting throughout the living room. The second one is the ghost of a little boy. The boy will appear to certain people looking extremely ill. It is currently unknown if this boy died in and around the area or what disease he is suffering from, but it is said that he resides in the home with the woman in white. The third being is by far the scariest of all 3. A ventriloquist dummy that will appear in the home or in the cupboards. This thing can move all by itself and talk by itself. It is very similar to the popular horror franchise Chucky, and it's said by some to be seeking to harm the living. I'm not sure if the ghost of the ventriloquist has taken over this dummy or if the dummy has taken on its own persona, but I definitely do not want to go anywhere where the primary residence is a demon puppet. Number 3 on this list is the 5 Fishermen Restaurant. This is a restaurant in Halifax, Nova Scotia, known for its exceptional oysters and also its ghostly inhabitants. The ground that this restaurant sits on wasn't always utilized for serving up fish and chips though. In fact, it has a very long history. In the early 1800s is when the building went up, and for a long time it acted as the town's only school. Nothing ghoulish or demonic about that. However, at around the turn of the century, the school moved and the building took on a new purpose. It became the mortuary for Halifax and made its dealings with the dead. Now, not every mortuary is going to become haunted, but this one had quite a lot to deal with over the years. In 1912, the unsinkable ship, the Titanic, sunk. It sunk roughly 640 kilometers off of the eastern shores of Canada, and therefore the closest places to assist with the rescue was these eastern provinces. Halifax acted as the leader in these rescue processes, and because of that, the mortuary had an onslaught of bodies of people whom had died on the ship. 5 years after that tragedy, Halifax incurred one of their own with the massive Halifax explosion. This was where a munitions ship exploded and it killed roughly 2,000 people just like that. This mortuary served as the primary designation for both of these incidents, and due to the unnatural deaths here, it makes sense that some spirits have clung on. Guests and employees alike have reported seeing ghosts all over this mortuary that turned restaurant. One of the dishwashers reported running out of the restaurant when he looked up from what he was doing and was staring directly at a ghost-like specter. The restaurant has attempted to have serious renovations done. However, I don't think that any amount of structural change will get these spirits to rest for good. Number 2 on this list is the Frank Slide. Now, even though the Frank Slide sounds like it could be a fun, popular dance move that takes over TikTok for a few weeks, it is far more morbid than that. On April 29th in 1903, in the mining town of Frank, which at that time was part of the Northwest Territories but is now a section of Alberta, there was a horrible tragedy. 110 million tons of limestone and rock came tumbling down in one of Canada's biggest landslides ever. This fell onto part of the town of Frank. Frank was located right next to Turtle Mountain, which after extensive mining had grown unstable. On April 29th, it all came crashing down and claimed the lives of 70 to 90 people. It is still to this day Canada's most deadly landslide to ever occur in history, and was a horrible tragedy that can only remind us how fleeting life can be. I think the craziest part about this landslide as well is that it wasn't just miners who were killed. Their wives, their families, all of them died at the hands of the Frank Slide. The remains of these bodies were never recovered recovered either, as the damage from the slide was far too devastating. Where all of this happened is now a section of a town called Crow's Nest Pass, and over a century later, the ghosts of the dead still haunt the area. This place is somewhere where visitors have reported feeling very unsafe. They say that the overall feelings of uneasiness are almost too much to bear and that they have to leave. Cries, howls, screams, this can all be heard late at night as you're trying to sleep. Lanterns will be seen in the night walking around at the hands of unknown apparitions. It is basically a full ghost town of people who never deserved to die in the first place, all wanting to get a second just to feel their lives again as they were so unfairly ripped away from them. Definitely one of Canada's most horrific tragedies, and now home to one of its most haunted locations. Number 1 on this list is the Banff Springs Hotel. This hotel is located in Banff, Alberta, and is truly one of the creepiest places that I've ever read about. Now, first off, I want to note the hotel itself looks gorgeous on the outside. The beautiful nature it is surrounded by is stunning, and the hotel gives me some serious Harry Potter Hogwarts vibes. However, when I say that this place is surrounded by nature, I really mean it. It is totally out on its own, with no other buildings in sight at all. The secluded site has been around for 132 years and has housed its fair share of visitors. Some of these visitors have had some incredible stays. I mean, when you look it up online, the hotel has a 4.7 Google rating, so I mean, it's pretty freaking good. Some of the guests, though, they never checked out. In the 1920s, a couple was set to have their wedding at this hotel. On the day of the ceremony, though, the bride, while she was walking down one of the hotel's beautiful marble staircases, tripped and fell, smacking her head on her descent and dying on the spot. This bride's spirit is one of the most notable sightings people have had when they're staying at this hotel. It's said that they often see a phantom in a wedding dress ascending and descending the stairs very quickly. She's also been seen in the ballroom dancing alone, potentially dreaming of the dance that she wanted so desperately to have with the husband that she never got to marry. In 1975, a longtime bellman of the hotel, Sam, died there. Since then, sightings of Sam have been pretty consistent. One story details how 2 women lost their room key and called the front desk to go and get it. The front desk person sent someone to go and open their room for these ladies. When that person had got there, though, the ladies were already in the room and said that another bellman had let them in. They described Sam to a T when they spoke about the bellman who helped them out. Instances like this have occurred time and time again at the hotel, with many people believing his spirit is still working there. Finally, with this hotel, you have room 873. Room 873 is rumored to be the home of a gruesome murder. One evening, a family was staying there, and the father, for some unknown reason, lost his mind, murdering his family and himself. After completely refurbishing the room, the hotel put it back in service, but now people who have stayed there report hearing the screams and the cries as if they were still dying. If you have to stay at this hotel, definitely avoid room 873.
Number 5 on this list is the Zack Baggin's Haunted Museum. Most haunted museums, or anything like that, are all kind of phony and corny. This one, though, this isn't for the faint of heart. Thrillist says when Zack Baggin's opened the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, he did his homework and picked the creepiest place possible. The attraction is inside an old Victorian home that dates back to 1938. It was owned by a family haunted by a child who died due to surgical complications. Later, when the home was vacant, intruders broke in and held satanic rituals in the basement. Adult actress Jenna Jameson actually grew up in the house and swears the stories are true, but doesn't like to talk about it too much. Today, you can take a guided tour of the Haunted Museum, frequently used as a filming location for Baggin's ghost adventures on the Travel Channel and Discovery Plus. The museum packs a lot into one visit with more than 30 rooms. Things start off relatively tame with a look at spooky artifacts and a gambling parlor and a closet full of creepy dolls. But the pace picks up with exhibits dedicated to notorious serial killers, an up-close look at a Volkswagen van used as a death machine by Jack Kevorkian, and a haunted hallway of killer clowns. It's best not to give away too many spoilers, but at one point you'll face an item described as the most haunted object in the whole world. You will even get to explore the basement at some point, which many people believe to still be extremely haunted. You gotta wonder why the heck so many horrible things happened here. Haunted child, satanic rituals, other questionable things that have probably not been leaked to the public. I guess it makes sense to have a haunted museum here, but obviously bringing in all of these other haunted items has just further promoted paranormal energy, and now this is clearly a hotspot for spirits and ghosts alike. Only go to this museum if you can handle a good scare. Number 4 on this list is RIight Ghost Town. This abandoned town is full of scary spirits, ghouls, and maybe a lot more. Thrillist says, take a short road trip out of Las Vegas and spend the afternoon exploring the ruins of RIight, one of the most compelling ghost towns in the country. A hub of mining activity during the gold rush, the town was quickly abandoned when the boom went bust following the panic of 1907. Wander around and you'll see the scattered remains of a bank, jail, and train depot. The landscape looks more like a nuclear war zone than a ghost town, but just as sinister and perhaps still home to the spirits who once lived there many years ago. We have talked a ton about ghost towns on this channel before. Something about ghost towns seems to attract spirits. Maybe like the sudden absence of people leaves a void that these spirits seem to want to fill. It also doesn't help the situation when you have people doing some very questionable things at these ghost towns. Considering they are totally abandoned and out of the way, ghost towns make for some pretty good places to have some covert meetings and deals go down. This one in Las Vegas, it's no different. Apparently a decent amount of criminal activity happens around here, with a lot of drug deals taking place here. Every now and again these deals can go sour, and usually that leaves a body. Murder and a gang presence aren't great things to sprinkle in when a town is already dealing with paranormal activity. For safety purposes, I recommend staying away from this town at all costs. Number 3 on this list is Westgate. So I am actually breaking the rules with this one a little bit because I think that you should definitely visit this place if you have the money. Thrillist says, some Las Vegas residencies never quite end. Elvis Presley redefined what it meant to be a superstar entertainer in this town, with more than 600 shows over 7 years at the International Hotel, which became the Las Vegas Hilton and is now the Westgate. The property continues to honor the king with a statue in the hotel lobby. Although Elvis passed away in Memphis, some believe his soul remains in Vegas, with his ghost haunting the Westgate International Theater and a lavish rooftop villa the singer called home whenever he was in town. It's not cheap, but you can book the penthouse yourself. Just call the desk and ask for the Elvis suite. I don't care how creepy it may be or how scary he would look, but if there is an opportunity to see the ghost of Elvis, then that is absolutely something that I definitely want to cash in on. Imagine you pull up to your hotel room after a night of drinking, and then you get to have a late night conversation with one of the greatest rock stars of all time ever. I don't think that Elvis would be the type of dude to hurt you or anything like that, even in ghost form. So as long as it's safe to do so, count me the heck in, dude. I want to go to Vegas and party with the ghost of Elvis. Number 2 on this list is Las Vegas Academy of the Arts. As somebody who graduated university for acting, an art school being haunted is just a tad bit triggering. Thrillist says the Las Vegas Academy of the Arts is a magnet school that specializes in music, theater, and other fine arts. Yet its legacy dates back to 1931, when it was known simply as Las Vegas High School, the first official high school in Las Vegas. The site has seen its share of renovations over the years, although 2 of its 3 original buildings remain on campus with their sturdy brick exteriors still in place. Generations of students have swapped stories about Mr. Petri, a ghost that roams the hallways and haunts the school's theater. Some claim to hear strange noises or feel a chill, especially when rehearsals carry over to evening hours. So, who is Mr. Petri? Some believe he was a former teacher. Others claim he owned a home that previously stood on the site of the school and burned down in a mysterious fire. Nobody knows for sure. All everyone does know is that Mr. Petri is a menace. Let me tell you folks, acting is hard enough as it is without some creepy ghost causing problems for you mid-monologue. And apparently he likes to do that all the time. Many shows and performances have been ruined by Mr. Petri. And the worst part about it is that he will only show himself to one person at a time sometimes. So the lead actor will be out there doing Hamlet and then all of a sudden see a ghost in front of him causing problems. The actor will naturally freak out and lose their mind, but no one else will see the ghost, they'll just see the actor on stage losing it. Which kinda makes the actor look like a bumbling idiot, but really they're getting attacked by some ghost. Try a different art school if you're looking for an artistic education. Number 1 on this list is Balis. If Trivago or any other site like that tries to recommend you stay at Balis, don't fall for it, guys. Thrillist says the worst fire in Nevada history tore through the old MGM Grand Hotel on November 21st, 1980. The blaze killed 87 people, mostly due to smoke inhalation, while helicopters rescued survivors from the roof. The property was eventually sold and renamed Balis, while a new version of the MGM Grand reopened a few blocks south on the Strip. The tower engulfed in the fire is still part of the hotel, and guests sometimes claim to see unusual shadows in hallways, hear strange noises, and notice furniture that mysteriously moves in the rooms, especially on higher floors that saw the worst of the flames. Many believe the strange activity is caused by the spirits of those who didn't survive the tragedy. 87 people dying in a tragedy like that is always going to leave something terrible behind, and that's what we have here. 87 spirits are now restlessly floating around in purgatory at this place. They tried to remodel and change the name and forget everything that happened, but an incident like that cannot be forgotten. The people who died and their spirits, they can't be forgotten. They're still there to this day, haunting the place and trying to seek help. Many of the reports haven't talked about these ghosts being evil, but just being misunderstood and trying to get out of this place. They didn't ask to die in a fire, and they also didn't ask to be left in this purgatory place forever. I would imagine that they want to move on, they just don't know how to get free of this. Hopefully someone can figure out a way to save these souls and let them pass on for good.
Number 5, Hoton Swamp. Already sounds pretty scary in itself. Something about swamps, you know what I mean? During the 17th century, the Hoton Swamp was used as a fortress by the Wampanoag people, the predominant band of natives in the area, against invasion by the early British settlers. It played a landscape role in King Philip's War as a strategic base of which to launch assaults with nearby English settlements. During the 18th and 19th centuries, settlers deemed the swamp to be useless, barren land, and it didn't really do much besides sit there and just kind of take up space. They attempted to drain it and convert it into a profitable farmland, however nothing really grew. The natives of the region placed a much higher value on the swamp, however, for centuries. The first people had relied on hunting food there, riddled with fauna, and the swamp had gained an important legend and folklore among them as being a place where many things meet. They named it Hokomak, the Algonquin term meaning place where spirits dwell, and that's exactly what people say they do. Dwell there. What makes this swamp so haunted is the different purposes it was used for. A cesspool for bones of the fallen. Some places are just more susceptible to violence and death over the years, and that reputation of spirits lingering is what's so heavy and cold about this location. Much of the swamp served a dual purpose as a sacred burial ground as well. The Hokomak is occasionally referred to as the home of the Hobomok. The Wampanoag people worshipped and feared Hobomok, the chief deity of death and disease. Hobomok, composed of human souls of the dead, was known to congregate in areas like the Hokomak Swamp. Thus the term and lore stuck. Yep, just a giant mud monster swallowing souls. Charming. There are many stories and legends that have become associated with this swamp and are even connected to the number 1 on my list. It remains a place of mystery and fear and apparently good frog catching. Number 4, LEL Cemetery. LEL Cemetery is a cemetery located in Lowell, Massachusetts. Founded in 1841 and located on the banks of the Concord River, the cemetery is one of the oldest garden cemeteries in the country, making it a perfect place for violence and an eternity of soul searching. Many of Lowell's wealthy industrialists are buried here under lavish Victorian tombstones. Visitors have claimed that this is one of Massachusetts' most haunted cemeteries. What makes a haunted cemetery more haunted than another haunted cemetery, you know? Is there like a competition or like a quota or something? Just gotta keep the numbers up. What is it? I feel like every local claims their cemetery is the oldest and most haunted, and this brings me to our fair maiden here, the mysterious witch, Bonnie. A popular meeting place amongst the local teens at night for some scares and some screams, the statue of a woman with her arms outstretched on a rectangular tomb, her hands clutching a veil that falls down behind her body as though it were a cloak caught in the wind. Her eyes lay cold, staring at the heavens. Under her left eye, a black tear. Paranormal researchers have claimed that the statue holds more of an electromagnetic current, and strange things can be seen in front and around the statue, making it seem like it's moving from time to time. Creepy. There is local lore that if you leave a coin or ribbon on the statue, then you'll get good luck, and in return, if you steal or take the items from the statue, the haunting whispers of bad karma will follow. Although research shows that this gravesite holds no actual sinister history, the ghostly sightings surrounding it are a hotspot within the cemetery. I bet at night under the moonlight this woman could be very terrifying. Number 3. Boston Common. Most common fact about the Common, one of the most haunted places in Boston. That rhymed really weird, didn't it? If you're out for a walk and feel the need to brush up on your American history, then you can be sure to either see the ladies by the trees or the Patriot men rushing the battlefront. Well, what's left behind from them at least. The Boston Common had a multi-purpose identity through the centuries. Originally as a farm, and then trading grounds for the British and American military, the Common was used as a camp during the American Revolutionary War. 20 minutes to load these old muskets and a lot of people dying. It was also used for public hangings up until 1817, most of which were from the large oaks, which were eventually all replaced with gallows in 1769. These grounds held weight during the witch trials and made a perfect open concept park that a spectacle could be enjoyed at. These people were sick. This place has seen its fair share of violence. The 350-year-old park is full of graves, ghosts, and gallows. It's almost impossible to know just how many bodies lay underneath the park, like a cesspool of unmarked graves from many different eras. Most buried here were low class, sick, or died in battle. Oh, and of course were hanged in front of the public. This place is home to many dark shadows, cold spots, and the occasional smell of gunpowder. Next time you're in Boston, swing by one of America's oldest and fullest cemeteries and see if you can see anything for yourself. Number 2. The Danver State Hospital. The Danver State Hospital, or also known as the Danver State Insane Asylum, was a psychiatric hospital located in Danvers, Massachusetts. It was built in 1874 and opened in 1878 on the isolated site in rural Massachusetts, which, fun fact, the judge who preceded the Salem witch trials lived on. That's bad karma already, isn't it? Despite being included in the National Registry for Historical Places in 1984, the majority of the building was demolished in 2007. At a cost of $1.5 million at the time, the hospital originally consisted of 2 main center buildings with housing for the administration, with 4 radiating wings on each side. The outermost wards were reserved for the most hostile patients. This was a prominent location where medications were being tested by the government, and the favored lobotomy was being fleshed out. When shock therapy failed to control the population, lobotomies started. And in 1939, the population of the hospital swelled to almost over 2,400 patients. A total of 278 people died at the hospital that same year. Neurology experts often call Danvers the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy. Ouch. Visitors to the hospital during these years reported lobotomy patients wandering around staring blankly at nothing, unaware of who they were or what they were doing. Large budget cuts in the 60s played a major role in the progression of closing the Danvers State Hospital, and with nicknames like Hell Hill Hospital and Lunatic Asylum, the hospital began slowly closing its facilities by 1985. The original hospital wards were closed and abandoned soon after. During the 80s, reports began to filter out of the hospital about missing teenage patients. The stories of ghostly figures and shadows in the windows were thriving. Are the ghosts of the lobotomized patients still aimlessly walking the realms of this now demolished hospital? What do you think? And number 1, the Bridgewater Triangle. Just a couple miles south of Boston is one of the most interesting and bizarre places in Massachusetts. I chose this as the number 1 spot due to not only the paranormal ghostly figures that have been seen across the vast plains, but 200 miles of connected weird events that will definitely catch our attention. It's named from the triangle shape. The paranormal events and phenomenon that occurs within these mapped lines includes as many as orbs, UFOs, Bigfoots, fairies, skinwalkers, alien hybrids, you name it, it's there. Well, possibly there. The towns of Raynham, Brockton, Norton, and Taunton are all subject to a universal head scratcher. In the 70s, there of course was a surge of UFO witnesses, at the same time several Bigfoot. That's interesting. Massachusetts just keeps getting stranger and stranger, doesn't it? Huge humanoid creatures, motherships, and landed UFOs have also been spotted and reported within this 200 square foot mile radius. Do you think this place is like a Skinwalker Ranch type of place? Maybe some motherships are trying to just reconnect with the Wi-Fi upstairs? I don't know. Whatever it is, the Bridgewater Triangle has been home to numerous documentaries and folklore and attracts spooky goers each year with its variety of paranormal activity. And coming in at number 5, we have the Hoton Mansion. Built in the 1890s in North Adams, Massachusetts, for the mayor himself, Albert Charles Hoton. This neoclassical revival-style mansion sits on 172 Church Street. A family man, Albert, was the president of Arnold Print Works, a prominent textile factory in North Adams. His wife, Cordelia, daughter Mary, and himself had owned and lived on the property right up until the fatal car accident which took the lives of the family in 1914. On an early summer morning, Albert and his family, accompanied by another family, Dr. and Mrs. Dutton and their daughter, and of course the family chauffeur himself, Mr. Witters, had decided to head out into the countryside for a leisurely drive. A drive that ultimately took their lives. Unfortunately, for everyone on that August 1st morning, after a steep turn, the car lost control and proceeded to screech off the road, resulting in a rolling fatal wreck. All the women in this tragedy losing their lives, with the men barely surviving from the multitude of injuries. On August 11th, just 10 days after the accident, without his wife and daughter, Albert mysteriously died in the home from what doctors think was a broken heart. It is said that 3 ghosts haunt the Hoton Mansion, including Albert himself, Albert's daughter Mary, and the driver, Mr. Witters. The mansion remained with the Hoton family until 1926, when Albert's daughter Florence and her husband sold the building to the Freemasons. This is when the spookiness really started happening. Through its multitude of use throughout the years, additions to this historic site were added on by the Masons, using it for ritual and spiritual purposes, making this story even weirder. Over the years, there have been countless paranormal witnesses claiming that the ghosts roaming the halls of the basement, Mr. Witters himself, guilt-ridden with the responsibility of the crash, and Mr. Witters took his own life shortly after returning home with injuries, and residents that have stayed at the site have claimed that the manly figure aimlessly rummaging through the basement is the driver himself. Among these claims have another spirit lurking in Mary's bedroom. It is said that overnighters have witnessed multiple bright lights and auras flying around the bedroom in the middle of the night. I wouldn't even step foot into this house, let alone set up camp and spend the night. No way. The Hoton Mansion remains a tourist attraction and hotspot for paranormal goers worldwide, and to this day is one of the most haunted and mysterious sites in all of Massachusetts. Number 4. The Hoosick Tunnel. The Hoosick Tunnel, from the Algonquin word place of stones and the Mohawk word forbidden, is a 4.75 mile active railroad tunnel in western Massachusetts that passes through the Hoosick Range, an extension of Vermont's Green Mountains, and runs from Deerfield River in the town of Florida to the city of North Adams. The construction began in 1815 and ending in 1875 with a budget of $2 million, at the time the largest tunnel ever constructed, and it was later the result of taking lives of over 200 men during its construction entirety, earning it the nickname from locals, the Bloody Pit. This haunted, barren 5-mile, completely enclosed stretch was subject to multiple accidents and deaths over the years, giving the tunnel its haunting history and reputation of being cursed itself. With the word forbidden, did the Mohawks know something that the workers didn't? Essentially, this cold, underground, pitch-black hole became one of America's strangest grave sites, resulting in everything from mysterious gas leaks, dynamite explosions, roofs collapsing, and even mechanic failures resulting in a mass flood. For the past decades, there have been numerous paranormal activity witnesses who have documented strange events, from police officers to the freight conductors themselves. Some of the reports over the last 100 years included numerous farmers and wagons ending up in different areas of the railroad, missing hours of time. The farmers had claimed that when spending time around the railroad and its tracks, that memory and confusion would always set in. Some residents have claimed that they have even been chased out of the tunnel by an unexpected freight train chugging along aggressively through the tunnel like a bat out of hell, and then vanishing. Numerous ghostly figures resembling workers roam the dark tunnel, and if that isn't scary enough, some people, including hearing the echoes and screams of even the workers who were buried alive under the rock, still holding their tools, or even seeing ghostly figures in pumping chambers where numerous men tirelessly making rafts not to drown. The Hoosick Tunnel remains one of the most visited and haunted places, marking it just one of the sites you'll probably never find me at. Just in 2020, the tunnel was yet again subject to a mysterious collapse, resulting in months of repair. Yeah, I say stop fixing it and just let it be. Number 3. The USS Salem. Planes, trains, and automobiles. Well, almost. A big boat. The USS Salem, a heavy cruiser built for World War II in 1945, was originally built for action. Its bold, aggressive architecture was one of the last, as it was more of a bluff to its opponents than actually a hero of war. In May 1949, War Departments handed the Salem's helm to Captain J.C. Daniel himself. The ship was built and updated with what was then the latest military tech and weapons, and it was meant to strike fear in whomever or whatever was in her way. Although the ship wasn't used in any action during World War II, it acted as a flagship, training operation, and main purpose as a threat to the naval enemy. It wasn't until the USS Salem had responded to the 1953 Ionian earthquake, or also known as the Great Kefalonia earthquake, as it hit the southern Ionian islands of Greece on August 12th, devastating the entire area. The USS Salem landed on Greek shores and acted as an improvised hospital and morgue, giving it its famous name, the Sea Witch. The ship was decommissioned shortly after its rescue and lays in Boston's harbor as a tourist attraction from all of its dark history. Some of the paranormal activities that arise on the ship include the Burning Man, who smells of rank death and can be seen in the mess hall where the bodies have been stored. Another famous apparition on the ship is the Ghost Girls, who lurk the halls of the ship. Little ghostly figures can be seen and felt on the legs of tour goers. Some people claim that the ship is even home to hellhounds, an aggressive pack of ghostly creatures that roam the ship growling and scratching at closed doors. Yeah, the next time my dog scratches at my door, she's going up for adoption, I'm sorry. Number 2, the Lizzie Borden House. This quaint bed and breakfast located at 230 2nd Street is home to one of America's most haunted and mysterious homes. The Lizzie Borden House gets its haunt from an unsolved murder of Lizzie Borden in 1892. One of the most infamous true crime figures known for her murdering of her father and stepmother with several blows to the head with a hatchet. Oof, ouch. Although acquitted, the killings remain unsolved to this day. This case earned notoriety and much that the popular local children's rhyme had been linked to this death. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. That is horrible. On August 4th, 1892, Lizzie's stepmother of 27 was struck 19 times while her father Andrew was hit 11. Although Lizzie Borden was acquitted and found not guilty, the dark history draws in crowds every night for its nightly tour of the premises. The Lizzie Borden room, the infamous room where all of the murders took place, is the most requested and most popular for paranormal overnighters. And not only can you enjoy a lovely inclusive breakfast to yourself, but the nightly house tour, ghost tour, and ghost hunt attracts fans of horror every night of the year. Yeah, that's terrifying. And there's a jingle to it. I don't like that at all. And coming in at number 1, the Salem Witch Trials. We can't talk about haunted places in Massachusetts if we're not going to bring up the witch trials. And I'm not talking about Sabrina the Teenage Witches, or anything of cute of that nature. These famously documented witch trials need no introduction, and unfortunately lays way to one of the most horrific events based in truth. The site of mass hysteria and hangings of supposed witches took place here and occurred in colonial Massachusetts between 1692 and 1693. More than 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft, or better known back then as the devil's magic, and 20 were ultimately executed. Eventually, the colony admitted the trials were a mistake and compensated the families of those convicted. Okay, yeah, sorry. I just thought when you sneezed, you didn't say bless you, so I already don't like you, so I figured you were a witch. I'm really sorry. Since then, the story of the trials has become famous in paranoia and injustice, and it continues to baffle researchers to this day. We all know the famous play written by American playwright Arthur Miller in 1953, The Crucible, depicting the mass hysteria and drama during these trials. This was the perfect time if you didn't like someone that a strategic and untimely sinister accusation led to the demise of thy neighbor. I saw Sarah Good with the devil. I saw Goody Osborne with the devil. Who else don't I like? I saw Bridget Bishop with the devil. Abigail. End of Act 1. Since the start of the trials and hysteria in North America, other European countries shortly followed with their own mass witch hunts, resulting in somewhere between 40,000 and 60,000 tried and executed for witchcraft. That's a lot of broomsticks. The Salem witch trials of Salem, Massachusetts, still one of the world's biggest hotspots for mystery and paranormal story.
Coming in at number 5 we have Terrace Inn. Located just north of the city of Petoskey lies the Victorian inn called Terrace Inn. The inn opened in 1911 and was known to be a luxury 38-room Victorian resort, though the perception of the Terrace Inn has since changed from a large number of scary ghost reports. It also doesn't help that there have been multiple deaths on the premise. Before this building was an inn, it was 2 boarding houses until they were torn down to create what we now know as Terrace Inn. During construction, 2 workers fell off a beam and sadly passed away. Therefore, it's rumoured that their spirits may have settled in at the inn once construction was complete. That's not the only accident and ghost story that has occurred at the Terrace Inn though, as many years later there was a woman named Abby Sweet who was staying at the inn. Abby was pregnant and unfortunately fell and lost her life. After that event occurred, her husband Edward passed away from heartbreak just a few years later. This accident occurred in room 211, which is known to have the most reports of ghost experiences and paranormal activity. That isn't the only spirit lurking in the inn though, as there is the interactive youth, a boy between the ages of 12 to 14 who has been seen inhabiting the basement. That being said, his identity and the reason for his presence are unknown. Over the decades there have been many reports of paranormal activity at the inn. If you ask the desk clerk for the inn's ghost files, they'll hand over a thick folder with accounts from past guests and employees. Even more frightening, it seems these reports may very well be true, as the reports span over 25 years written by strangers with similar ghost stories. Most reports from guests and workers are of hearing sounds of footsteps and voices late at night. Additionally, doors open and close by themselves unexplainably. Some have even reported hearing the sound of a piano playing or a party being held, but when investigated, the area the sounds were coming from was vacant. Plenty of paranormal investigators have spent the night at this haunted hotel, and they all agree it's crawling with paranormal activity. Lucky for the guests though, the investigators and workers all agree that the spirits aren't harmful or hold negative energy. That all being said, this historic inn remains one of our most paranormally active locations in Michigan. In at number 4 we have Solchoy Point Lighthouse. On the shores of Lake Michigan sits Solchoy Point Lighthouse. The lighthouse has been in operation since 1895 and it's the only active light left on the lake, but behind its walls holds the stories and spirits. Between 1902 and 1910, Joseph Willie Townsend was the lighthouse keeper who lived in the upstairs bedroom with his wife. For decades it's been said that Captain Willie Townsend remains attached to the old structure. The captain died at the age of 63 in 1910 and his death remains a mystery, though some believed it was cancer as he was known to be a heavy smoker. His body was embalmed in the basement of the lighthouse. Once Mr. Townsend died, some curious individuals got inside and went into the basement, where they found pieces of an old broken up kitchen table. Once they reassembled the table, that's when the paranormal activity began. The table chairs kept getting rearranged on their own and silverware was set on the table in a specific pattern, the way the captain preferred them. There have been multiple reports of a strong smell of cigar smoke within the lighthouse. Additionally, the captain's face has been seen in the upstairs bedroom mirror on 13 different occasions. The Solchoy Point Lighthouse is one of the Upper Peninsula Paranormal Research Society's favourite spots to investigate due to its high activity from the paranormal. They have seen the alleged shadow of Townsend move behind the curtains of the lighthouse and have also seen him appear in a mirror. Not only that, but one guest had even said that during her visit she saw a man wearing a heavy blue coat walking across the yard of the lighthouse. She waved at the man, but he just ignored her. Not thinking much of it, she went on with her day. When the guest got home and did research on the lighthouse, she realised the man she saw was the captain himself. And to this day, those who visit Solchoy Point Lighthouse leave with stories that turn non-believers into believers of the paranormal. In at number 3 we have Mackinac Island. One of Michigan's most popular tourist destinations is also one of its most haunted, Mackinac Island. The small island sits on Lake Huron, covering almost 4 square miles of land between the upper and lower peninsulas of Michigan. The island was originally home to indigenous settlements long before European colonization. Seeing at least 2 battles during the War of 1812, it has been the resting ground of many tragic deaths, making it a prime location for hauntings hauntings and paranormal activity. In a part of the island you will find the Grand Hotel. The area first served as a missionary school, but today it's known as a luxury hotel. Through investigators, there have been many reports of paranormal activity in the area, and it's known that the Grand Hotel is one of the hotspots for paranormal activity on the island. Legend has it that construction workers uncovered human remains while digging the hotel's foundation, with paranormal activity stories being recorded in the theatre, outside grounds, and in its rooms. The staff have also reported seeing a man in a top hat playing the bar's piano. Others see a woman in Victorian clothing who roams the halls, even getting into beds. Another paranormal hotspot is the Mission Point Resort, which was a moral realignment, a religious movement from the 1930s. The resort's popular ghost story is about a man named Harvey who died in the late 1960s. Supposedly, Harvey was dealing with a broken heart and ended his life behind the resort, not being found until 6 months later. Some people believe there's more to the story, that he was perhaps murdered. That being said, Harvey is often reported in the resort's theatre, where visitors have reported being pinched or poked. With the never-ending ghost stories and paranormal reports, the island is deemed the most haunted town per capita in the United States, with 16 haunted locations per 478 people. It is safe to say that there are some paranormal activities and ghosts lurking on the grounds of the island. Coming in at number 2, we have Holly Hotel. Due to the growing number of railroad passengers passing through the area, the hotel was built in 1891. Many staff, residents, and haunted historians will agree that the Holly Hotel is one of the most haunted buildings in the state of Michigan. Norman Gauthier, a professor of parapsychology who is also known as a world-famous ghost hunter, investigated the hotel in 1989 and concluded that the building is indeed haunted by a great number of spirits. Throughout the years, the hotel survived 2 fires exactly 65 years apart. Many residents and guests of the hotel have talked about the weird feelings they got on the second floor of the hotel, without us actually admitting to seeing ghosts. The inner's most famous ghost is said to be the former owner himself, Mr. Hurst. Hurst passed away in the 1920s, but many believe he just can't let go of his hotel. He is the most active ghost at the Holly Hotel and wasn't happy with the renovations that have been done to his inn. The rumour is if you see a man wearing a frock coat and top hat and smell cigars, you most likely have met the man himself. The other most common spirit would be with the former hostess, Nora Kane. According to the hotel, Nora's ghost is seen most often in the bar and back hallway. She has been heard playing the piano or softly singing a tune throughout the hotel, and her flowery perfumes can be faintly smelt when she is around. Those are only the 2 most common spirits of the Holly Hotel, though there are so many more encounters reported by visitors and ghost hunters. And finally, in at number 1, we have Beggin Mansion. Found in Niles, Michigan, sits an old mansion that was built in 1847. The home was constructed by a local whiskey distiller who sold it to an attorney, Strother Beggin, and that's why it was referred to as the Beggin Mansion. Across the street of the mansion lies the family's private cemetery. Strother built the tomb across the street as a final resting place for his mother, and it wasn't too long afterward another family member joined the cemetery. Strother's son, born in 1969, tragically passed away, and a total of 12 family members are now entombed in the crypt. The ghost stories surrounding the Beggin mausoleum are at least based on truth, if not completely true. Family legends about Harriet's odd behaviour were cited in newspapers over time, but not until much later, accompanied by reporting on unverifiable hauntings. Jumping to the late 1980s, when working to restore the mansion, the property owner reported hitting their head on a table in the hall, but something hitting them on the back. As well, they experienced instances of being pushed forward by an unknown force. Additionally, the doors would open and close behind them unexplainably. The renovated mansion is vacant now, but no one dares to buy it due to the many cases of hauntings and paranormal activity. Coming in at number 5, we have William A. Irvin. During the fall season, the ship has haunted tours with actors, but the ship really is haunted. The haunted ship began in Duluth in 1992. Before the haunted ship started, the William A. Irvin was open for regular boat tours during the month of October. Historically, this month was really slow, and the DECC needed a way to generate more revenue during this quiet month. Having heard about a failed attempt by Cleveland's William G. Mather trying to become a haunted ship, the DECC decided to try their own hands at a haunted attraction. The William A. Irvin partnered up with UMD to give the school's school's drama department some experience on production and acting. Needless to say, their attempt was a huge success. More than 2 decades later, the haunted ship is the peak of the Irvin's yearly business. The most common sighting that employees relate is that a lady in white has been seen walking around the ship, noticeably. She is usually up on deck and is dressed in period clothing. Nobody has ever been able to identify who she is or why she is tied to the vessel. There is also said to be a former captain who is still overseeing his ship. He is most often seen in the captain's chair and is said to be angry that the ship remains in dock and is no longer seaworthy. There are another 2 men haunting the ship. One sticks to the front of the ship and apparently does not understand what has happened to him, while the other sticks to the rear of the ship and has confirmed that he died after falling from a ladder. The family of the second man has come forward and said the story surrounding his death was always suspicious and they were denied a claim to his pension. In at number 4 we have Enger Tower. The 82-year-old watchtower can be found right in the middle of Enger Parr. The tower was built in 1939 and looks over the Duluth Harbor, being known as one of the most well-known haunted places in Minnesota, and for good reason. The tower is 531 feet above Lake Superior and is built of bluestone from local sources. Enger Tower was first dedicated by Crown Prince Olav and Crown Princess Martha of Norway on June 15th. It was built as a tribute to businessman Bert Enger, who passed away in 1931. The dedication was in honor of Bert Enger, a native of Norway who came to this country and became a successful furniture dealer. At the time of his death, Mr. Enger donated 2/3 of his estate to the city of Duluth. This included the land known as Enger Hill, which along with Enger Tower is also the home of Enger Park and Enger Golf Course. The tower can be seen almost anywhere throughout the city and has since been restored. There is a local legend that a man took his own life in 1948 by jumping off the 5th level of Enger Tower. They say his body has been found hours later but was never identified. That being said, there are numerous ghost stories of visitors seeing a man on the 5th floor of the tower before entering, but when they reach the top, he is gone. Coming in at number 3 we have Van Dusen Mansion. In 1892, grain baron George Van Dusen built a monumental mansion for his family. With 12,000 square feet, 10 fireplaces, a turret, and a $45,000 price tag, the home was a symbol of turn-of-the-century prosperity. After 2 generations of Van Dusens moved out in 1937, the building had been used to house almost everything except a family since, being used as a school, training medical facility, and even a college throughout the years. It was vacant in the late 1930s and spent 20 years as the College of Commerce. It was home to Hamline University Law School, then the Horst International Education Center. In the late 1980s, the castle fell on hard times and became little more than a flop house. By the early 90s, it was headed for the wrecking ball. 2 weeks before it was scheduled to be demolished, it was rescued by Wisconsin entrepreneur Bob Poling, who bought it for $237,000. Now a venue to hold fairytale-esque weddings, the Van Dusen Mansion has had its fair share of past lives. In at number 2 we have Mounds Theatre. The renovated theatre, an 86-year-old movie house, can be found in Minnesota. The old theatres have been rumoured for the past several years to be a home of community of creepy ghosts. One story goes, as the Mounds was built in 1922 and operated as a movie house until 1967, when it closed so abruptly that when volunteers arrived many years later to renovate the place, they found popcorn on the floor. The subject of paranormal TV shows and professional ghost hunting investigations, the theatre is allegedly haunted by a trio of ghosts: a happy little girl who bounces a ball on stage, a cursed old man who lurks in the shadowy corners of the projection booth, and a crestfallen usher who walks up and down the aisles in search of his lost love. The ghosts in the theatres are so active that the owner had a party of 4 Ghostbusters in a projection room sit in one dark and stormy October night. The dim light was extinguished and the room grew chilled. The owner stated that as the 4 sat silently awaiting their fate, shivering in the dark, and all at once there was the sound of a man crying. When investigating the sounds of the crying man, they found a shadow figure in the corner of the room. The figure reported having black glittering eyes and an aura of anger. Because of the odd ghost encounter and negative energy, they had to abruptly end the ghost investigation before it was too late. Another former owner, who reopened the theatre in 2001, claims that the spirits of the theatre have gone physical and grabbed them while they were working late at night. Some paranormal investigators have left with claw marks on their backs, but the scariest ghost of them all is considered the young girl. This is the theatre's most notorious ghost and is seen in a pink dress, often bouncing a ball on the stage. And finally, in at number 1 we have Anoka State Hospital. Located in Anoka Town is the Anoka State Hospital, which is arguably the most haunted place in Minnesota. The Anoka Hospital was the first state asylum for individuals that were deemed insane. The building was established in 1898 and opened in 1900 to admit patients from other state asylums that had become too crowded. The first 100 patients were males from St. Peter's State Hospital and were considered to be chronic incurables, men who had lost their minds due to heredity, causes, or environment. In 1906, 115 women were also transferred to the asylum from St. Peter's State Hospital. Residents were not to receive any type of treatment at this asylum, as this was the final stop for them until they passed away. And passed they did. A total of 86 of the original patients were buried in numbered graves in the asylum cemetery. The original name of the institution was Anoka State Asylum, but in an attempt to soften the image, they changed its name in 1937 to the Anoka State Hospital. Although the name was kinder and gentler, treatment at the facility was not. Patients were subjected to medical experiments and suffered both mental and physical harm. The original hospital complex closed in 1999 and residents were transferred to a new facility located close by. The buildings and property were then given to Anoka County to use for offices and to house the county workhouse. The remainder of the buildings were closed and boarded up. With such a terrifying past, it is no wonder that the Anoka State Hospital has been rumored to house the spirits of past patients. Former employees have reported that while unusual occurrences happen throughout the buildings, the most paranormal activities are linked to the tunnels located below the buildings. These tunnels were used as a way of transferring patients from one building to another without risking escape. Ironically, many patients believed these tunnels would lead them to freedom, and so they tried to escape by going down into them, but after a few twists and turns, escapees realized that the tunnels were more of a maze than an escape route. Without an understanding of where each tunnel went and how they joined together, it was easy to get hopelessly lost in them. Several escapees became so disorientated and distraught that they took the only way out that they felt was left to them and ended their lives. For years, employees would report hearing footsteps trudging through the tunnels, stopping, pausing. There was also reports of whispering and low voices in conversation, but the words were not understood. The paranormal activities became so rampant that most employees refused to use the tunnels because they were just too eerie. Today, only maintenance and security are allowed in them. Today, the county owns the buildings that made up the former insane asylum complex. Although the complex was eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, it appears that time has passed. The current buildings are in a state of extreme disrepair.
Number 5 on this list is Stivers School for the Arts. This is a high school that's attracted hundreds of artistic students from around the region for years. It's apparently a really good school, however, ever since a murder back in the 1920s, it's been deeply haunted. AGC writes, according to the online magazine Dayton Most Metro, a teacher named Mary Tyler was found dead in the pool with a locket in one hand and a broken pointer in the other. The teacher was reportedly involved with a senior student at the time of her death. He disappeared after her body was found and was never seen again. Officials believe the unnamed student tore his picture out of the teacher's locket so nobody would suspect him, according to the writer Julian Heisler. The school eventually covered over the pool, building a classroom on top of it. A trap door still leads down into the pool, which is used for storage now, Heisler said, but it seems Mary Tyler never left. Students and maintenance staff have reported Tyler's ghostly figure levitating in the abandoned pool and floating about the lower levels and the network of tunnels buried underneath the school, banging on pipes and wailing loudly wherever she goes, Dayton Most Metro reported. A floating dead body. Yeah, that sounds pretty haunted to me, guys. Ever since this ghostly incident, there have been tons of spooky moments reported by students. Lights flickering, temperature changes, items mysteriously moving around by themselves, and things of this nature happening regularly at this school. It's crazy that something that went down 100 years ago still has such a hold over this place, but literally a century later and we still haven't shaken the ghost of Mary Tyler. Hopefully the next century is a little bit less scary for the students at Stivers School for the Arts. Number 4 on this list is the Cleveland Federal Reserve. The Cleveland Federal Reserve is where the money is. Now this isn't a comment on people being haunted by crippling debt, even though that's probably the most realistic thing I've ever said on this channel. No, this place is haunted by an actual poltergeist that you don't want to mess with. Matilda is the name of our ghost in question, and she's said to haunt the vault down below. Now the good thing about this place is that you actually can't even get to the haunted area. So even for those of you who are feeling daring, you aren't going to be able to go and visit Matilda because it's off limits to the public. Matilda used to work here and was deeply involved in the stock market. That's why when the market suffered a horrible crash in 1929, Matilda felt trapped and saw no other way than to take her own life. She did so in this building, and now it is forever haunted by her spirit passing through the underground walls, scaring all of those who work down there. It's hard to know how accurate this haunting really is because we don't really have any proof of it. That, however, is more due to the fact that it's super off limits and super well guarded vault that nobody can get to. If we can trust the verbal accounts of the people who've run into her, and there have been many, then we should definitely fear this vault. Number 3 on this list is Crybaby Bridge. This is definitely one of the most famous spots in the state when it comes to hauntings. This one specifically is the Rogues Hollow Crybaby Bridge and has a pretty sad and scary history. There are 2 legends that could be true in regards to this bridge. The first one says that the mother of a newborn child had a falling out with her lover. He abandoned her and she fell into a deep depression. She responded by throwing her newborn over the bridge and then followed that by throwing herself over as well. The second legend says that 2 parents of a newborn child were driving down the road. They got to the bridge, and on that bridge their car spun out on some black ice. The car crashed into a tree right after the bridge, killing both of the parents. The baby in the back of the car survived though, at least for a time. This road doesn't get traveled on often, and it was very cold that evening. When people eventually did come upon the crash, it was too late. Ever since this incident happened, this bridge has been rightfully avoided by the locals. The horrible sound of a baby crying can be heard echoing throughout the river that it passes over. They say that standing on this bridge for too long, it's not good for your brain or your mental state. That your sanity will slowly slip away from you, and any happiness and good feelings that you may have had will be sucked away down that river for good. Not a bridge that you should want to go down at all, so avoid it altogether. Number 2 on this list is Squire's Castle. So calling this place a castle is a bit of a stretch, because the castle was never actually built. News 5 Cleveland says, located in the North Chagrin Reservation of the Cleveland Metro Parks, this castle is a reflection of the builder Fergus B. Squires, who was a founding member of the Standard Oil Company. The actual castle was never built, so what it's standing on today was the shell of the gatekeeper's house for the estate. Legend has it that Fergus's wife, Rebecca, was very much a city girl who wanted nothing to do with nature. Stories say Rebecca was walking up the stone stairs when she became startled by something outside her window. In a panicked state, she dropped her lantern and tumbled to her death down the cold stone staircase. Ever since this tragedy happened, Rebecca's ghost has never left, haunting all of those who visit or stay at the estate and bemoaning her unfortunate fate. The thing is that she isn't the thing that most people are scared of. It's whatever the thing was that frightened Rebecca so much that she fell to her death. Rumor has it that there could be a werewolf-like beast roaming the estate. Dark red eyes have been seen in the night at afar, and the howls of some wolf-like creature have also been reported. Is it possible that Rebecca saw this werewolf so many years ago and that's what frightened her? Maybe she isn't trying to haunt the place at all, but actually trying to scare people away from this place so the same fate doesn't happen to them. Either way, I don't recommend going. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Lorraine Palace Theater. You know, for once, it would be really nice to go see some theater without fearing for your life. Sadly, you aren't gonna get that at the Lorraine Palace Theater. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution writes, the Lorraine Palace Theater opened in 1928 in Lorain, Ohio, near Cleveland. It seats just over 1,700 guests and was the first movie theater in the state to show talking pictures, according to the theater's website. Dave Hensley, a paranormal researcher and the founder of EVP Mediums, told the Chronicle-Telegram after investigating the palace that there are so many spirits there he couldn't even count them all. We got a name from a gentleman named Ed who said that he worked at the shipyard. That's profound because the shipyard was directly behind the palace. He claimed that he was murdered pushed downstairs, Henley said. There was a spirit who said that he died of drugs as well. And we had spirits that were killed in the 1924 tornado that hit Lorain. That was pretty emotional, one of them said. My My body flew, Henslet told the Chronicle. The theater's operation director told the newspaper most people in the area probably know about the ghosts and spirits that roam the palace's hallways. I think everybody in Lorain County has been privy to the rumors of the unexplained activity in the Lorain Palace Theater, Chris Pataki said. In fact, a documentary in the haunted theater called Ghosts of the Palace is scheduled to debut at the movie house this weekend. Pretty ballsy move right there, guys, literally screening a movie about your haunted theater in said haunted theater. All of this though should make it very clear how haunted this place actually is. Literally everybody around this area knows about this spot. And whenever you're getting a full-on movie made about how specifically haunted you are, then you know that you've made it as a haunted location. Even though most people make it out of this theater unscathed, that can't be said for everybody. Attacks have been reported and left people feeling very emotionally and even physically scarred. Netflix is a thing for a reason now, guys. Let's use it. Number 5 on this list is the Plaza Theater Performing Arts Center. Built in 1930, this beautiful theater has had many shows and screenings here over the years. For 55 years, it was in operation as one of the premier spots to have your movie shown, but in 1985, the theater shut down. It remained as such for about 20 years when in 2006, it began to get renovated. Now it's mainly just for live theater and other performance art in the city of El Paso. Like a lot of beautiful old theaters though, as time passes, legends emerge, and this one in particular certainly has its fair share. The Plaza Theater for Performance Arts Center has 3 primary ghostly apparitions it houses. The first is our very standard and very classic drifting woman in white. Looking sad and down on her luck, the spirit of this woman will often drift around through the rafters and has been seen by many workers throughout the years. The second is a man in all black who materializes in front of people. He's described a bit like a shadow creature, but slightly less menacing. I suppose if we have our woman in white, it's only fitting that we have a man in black to get a little bit of variety going. The third ghost sticks with the theme of spicing things up and is actually a little boy with a bouncing ball. It's not a basketball, but a small bouncy ball that the child seemingly plays with as he haunts the theater. Nobody knows the origin of these ghosts or how they got here at all. Are they connected? Maybe once a family unit who died here together, or are they all separate and have each suffered strange tragedies at this location over the century? El Paso, I'm sure, has some other theaters, and I'd stick to those ones if you're looking to watch some live shows if you're there. Number 4 on this list is Henley Row. Located on the Texan island of Galveston on the Gulf Coast, this is the most famous haunted spot for locals in the region. Texas Highways writes, "It's not surprising that Henley Row is a hotspot for supernatural activity. Completed between 1855 and 1858 for shippers and cotton brokers, it was the town's tallest structure during the Civil War. The roof doubled as a Confederate lookout for Union ships. Galveston and nearby barrier islands, history had been laced with tragedy. It was the site of a bloody Civil War fight, and serial epidemics of yellow fever decimated the populace. Hurricanes blast through regularly. The 1990 storm left up to 12,000 casualties in the worst natural disaster in US history. No wonder Texas writer Brian Woolley called Galveston an old cemetery with a beach attached. The resident ghosts of Henley Row represent aspects of Galveston history. There's the Confederate soldier seen on the roof and around the building. The bloodied teenage factory worker is a vestige of the building's cotton grading days. The lady in white and the running and playing little boy and little girl are thought to be 1900 storm victims. The upper floors house apartments and offices now, but Henley Market's glass ceiling reveals views of stairs and landings. During renovations, workers reported tools mysteriously moving around. Staff recall other spooky experiences as well. Some years ago, a friend gave her old photo of Dr. Wilbur from a house on Church Street that's always displayed in the shop. When Hurricane Ike inundated the building with 10 feet of water in 2008, the photo went undamaged while many other things were destroyed. Every year on November 1st, employees construct an elaborate Day of the Dead altar that includes the photo and lighted candles. Before closing, the staff follows a 3-person backup routine to ensure the candles are completely extinguished, even dousing them with water. Yet almost every single year, 1 or more candles are burning the next morning. I can't imagine working at a place where we had to light candles for our ghost altar. Like, that action alone would make me want to quit immediately. I suppose the one good thing is that the ghosts here don't appear to be particularly evil or wanting to inflict harm. Still though, waking up and heading to work is already a tall task as it is, but knowing that there's a dead little boy and girl waiting there, yeah, that's a solid no-go for me. Number 3 on this list is the USS Lexington. The ship has its own museum dedicated to it now, and it is 100% haunted. The decommissioned World War II aircraft carrier is riddled with different phantoms. This museum is literally said to receive, on average, hundreds of reports of ghostly apparitions in 1 year. That is so much supernatural energy that is just congregated here. Now, World War II was obviously an awful time, and if this boat played a major role in the Battle of the Atlantic, which I imagine it did, then it assuredly saw its fair share of tragedies. The ghosts are not quiet about their presence, they make themselves very known. One of the most famous ones resides in the engine room. Apparently, visitors will go there and a spirit will form explaining the engines and how they work. Then, when his lecture is over, poof, he will be gone in a puff of smoke. There's also a general sailor that walks around the ship and is actually said to be rather helpful. However, with these tame ghosts, there are some troublemakers as well. Small items that you may have on your person, a wallet, a watch, a phone, a keychain, anything like that are often reported missing after people get on the ship. If you do intend to go here, then hold on to your valuables very closely and get ready for a long lecture on engines. Number 2 on this list is Bragg Road. For over 100 years now, this road has been haunted by a very strange and ghostly light. It's been seen by hundreds of people during that time, and nobody can explain it. Texas Highways says, in the heart of the big thicket is Hardin County, and in the heart of Hardin County is the infamous Bragg Road, home to countless sightings of the ghost road light that appears to nighttime travelers on the road between Saratoga and the defunct village of Bragg Station. Before the current road was built, the Arrow Strait clearing served as Santa Fe Railroad's branch line built in 1903. From its inception, locals considered the line haunted by Mexican laborers murdered by a thieving foreman, a deserter shot by Confederate soldiers, a hunter lost forever in the woods, and a decapitated railroad brakeman searching for his head. But all the stories share a common theme, a floating orb of light. The road replaced the railroad tracks in 1934, but the light remained, seen by hundreds of people over the decades. In the 1960s, Archer Fullingham, editor of the County News, spread its notoriety in articles. National Geographic published a clear photo of the light in a 1974 feature about the Big Thicket. Texas folklorist Francis Albernithi documented sighting stories from the old-timers and young folks alike. In 1997, Hardin County designated Bragg Road as Ghost Road Scenic Drive Park. A pretty road through the woods in the daytime turns into a spooky spot for supernatural sightings by night. Word is the most auspicious times to see the light are on moonless autumn nights. What the heck is this light that has been haunting this place for all these years? Even National Geographic, a very highly reputable column, has posted stories on it with actual photos including it. If it's a manifestation of some of these ghosts, then which ghost is causing it, and maybe more importantly, is it dangerous? If you want to find out, then you need to head to Bragg Road and look for yourself, but I wouldn't recommend it, honestly. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Yorktown Memorial Hospital. This hospital is definitely up there as one of the most haunted spots in Texas, and could even make a play for the most haunted spots in America. It was built in the 1950s and managed by the Roman Catholic Church for a few decades before eventually closing down in 1986. Then for 8 more years until 1992, it was a drug rehab facility, but finally in 1992, it closed for good. Since then, it's been abandoned and gained some very serious ghostly legends by the locals. One of the most famous demonic creatures that resides here is this black specter with bright glowing red eyes. It's not shy either and will attack you if you're here alone or in a vulnerable state. This is the most famous of the presences here, but it isn't alone. The ghost of a man who appears to have a bullet wound directly in his forehead is also said to live here. His ghost is a lot less forceful than the dark demon though, and is said to just show himself to visitors rather than attack them. The spirits of nuns are said to be on the second floor though as well. These spirits are similar to our demon creature and will claw and scratch at people who decide to come here. Along with all of this, we also get our classic indicators of a haunted location, such as feelings of despair as you walk through, temperature changes, and moans echoing throughout the building. Avoid this place at all costs if you want to keep a tight grip of your sanity. Number 5 on this list is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Operating from 1864 to 1994, this asylum, like most of the entries on this list, has certainly been through the ringer. This place was meant to only house 250 people at its max, but on many occasions had over 2,400 people residing here. Everyone was crammed in like animals, and considering this building was never meant to see this many patients at once, the living conditions were pretty horrible. Whenever you cram that many people into a small space together, especially an asylum, some pretty nasty things will go down as well. Several murders have taken place here over the years, along with incidents of patients and workers taking their own life. The haunting of this location was pretty progressive and didn't come on all at once. Reports date back to the early 1900s and got increasingly more frequent as time went on. Eventually it became clear by the later 1900s that this was no longer a usable space and they needed to move on. This is why it shut down in 1994 and has no medical purpose at this point. In fact, now the only thing that it has is ghost tours. The owner of this place know the legends are far stretching with this asylum and intend to make a profit on it. The ghosts are decently friendly here, or at least for the most part aren't dangerous. However, there have been a few instances where individuals have been scared to a point of serious and significant trauma. If you do plan to go here, then make sure you have a thick skin and aren't frightened easily. Number 4 on this list is Haunted Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry is a small town in West Virginia that honestly looks like something out of a storybook. It's comprised of roughly 119th century restored buildings. As you can imagine, it's a very quiet town and there isn't too much of a big city vibe going on here at all. This place wasn't always quiet though. In the American Civil War, this town played a pivotal role and was fought over multiple times throughout the years. People believe that it was through the death during the Civil War that this place has developed an affinity to spirits. Deborah Block says, at the nearby True Treats historic candy store, chocolate and other candies are brightly lit on tables and in baskets. The cute and welcoming shop is popular with visitors, hardly seeming like a place where a ghost would want to hang out. But store manager Tara Dockman, known as the Ghost Lady, in town for her sensitivity to paranormal activity, says there are 2 ghosts who frequent the store, and she even knows one of them by name. The female has a white flowy gown and she goes to the top floor of the store where there are no customers, she explained. And Colby, a man, likes to show himself and usually shows a shoulder or a pants leg which you'll see walk across a room. They both like to throw candy around and slam doors on customers. Dockman said Colby is a troublemaker who may also push people. She assured me that she had spoken to him about not bothering me while I was in the shop and was hiding in a corner storage area. Tara isn't some nutbag who's the only one who sees ghosts here either. Tons of people in the town have had run-ins with them. In fact, the biggest attraction this town has to offer are the ghost tours that highlight how haunted this place truly is. Number 3 on this list is Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. The park is no longer functional, and based on all of the incidents that went down here, that's probably a good thing. It all started in the 1700s when a settler, Mitchell Clay, and the local Shawnee Native Americans fought and ended with 3 of Clay's children dying and lots of Shawnee warriors passing away as well. This was the inciting incident of the tragic movie that is Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Also, 200 years later, in the 1920s, this land was bought and turned into an amusement park. The buyer wasn't aware of this history though and didn't realize the dark mark that had been left here by that battle so many years ago. There were a decent amount of tragic incidents that went down here while the amusement park was operational, but there are 2 that stand out as being the most stunning. The first one involved a young girl on the swings. While she was on the swings, a delivery truck, without seeing her, backed straight into her and she passed away. The second one involved someone who drowned in the swimming pool because their arm got stuck in the drain. The amusement park had seen enough and shut down in 1966. It was roughly 20 years later that they discovered the history of this place and pieced it all together, assuming that a curse must have been responsible. Locals don't dare go to this place anymore for fear of this curse. It should also be noted that the few who have stepped foot on this place again have reported run-ins with that young girl who died so many years ago. It seems that this curse won't allow her spirit to pass on, and now she wanders the area. I'm sure that there are a bunch of other amusement parks in West Virginia that are a lot more fitting and functional than this one. Highly recommend avoiding Lake Shawnee altogether. Number 2 on this list is West Virginia Penitentiary. Would this really be a most haunted place list if we didn't throw a prison on here? Paranormal activity usually favors places that have seen a lot of tragedies and sadness, and this penitentiary has definitely had its fair share. This prison opened up in the 1860s and was active for 119 years before finally being shut down. In that time, it saw over 100 executions, countless riots where people were either severely injured or died, fires, and an insane amount of human rights violations. All of this has led to what we have now, which is just a really haunted prison. Though the prisoners are gone, they're not forgotten, and by many accounts, the ghosts of some of the 998 men who died here still roam free. There's a shadow man that has been seen and even photographed. Staff of the prison have been accosted by unseen forces. Strange noises still echo throughout the cell blocks, and something dark lurks in the bowels of the building. That was a small passage from Moundsville Haunted History, who are familiar with the prison. 998 men though. That's how many different individuals are thought to potentially haunt this place. That's literally a full-on ghost army right there, guys. This place must have been horrible if that many people's souls are left wandering around this space. If I was the owner of this spot, I'd do those 998 people a favor and just knock this place to the ground. Maybe then these ghosts can finally rest. And finally, number 1 on this list is Point Pleasant. This has got to be the top spot on our list just considering the amount of lore surrounding the creature here. The Mothman. If you're watching videos on this channel, then I imagine you're already probably familiar with what this creature is, but for those who aren't, the Mothman is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 15th, 1966 to December 15th, 1967. Shayla Klein says, according to legend, Mothman is a black 10-foot creature with wings and red eyes. Articles and newspapers at the time were reporting that the monster was also commonly seen in the TNT area near town, with some locals speculating that perhaps people were really seeing cranes or owls, and others wondering if the creature was created in some sort of mutation accident involving the chemicals associated with storing TNT. Regardless, legend has it that mysterious men in black suits began visiting the town shortly after the sighting reports. The most infamous sighting of Mothman was on December 15th, 1967. Locals said that they saw Mothman on top of or flying over the Silver Bridge, which was a suspension bridge over the Ohio River that connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Gallipolis, Ohio. According to Mothman lore, shortly after the creature was spotted on the bridge collapsed, resulting in the deaths of 46 people. An investigation into the disaster found that a fracture in a suspension chain was the cause. This is one of the most famous American urban legends ever. The amount of people who saw this creature during this period of time and the fact that high-ranking secret officials started to investigate it all point to its legitimacy. It was active for about a year and then just totally disappeared though, and nobody knows what happened to it. The leading theory is that the government was able to capture whatever it was and probably took it to a secret base to study it. If that's the case, then Point Pleasant is most likely safe now, but be wary of what's flying over top of you if you do decide to go here.
Coming in at number 5, we have Goldfield, Arizona. Being deemed as one of Arizona's most haunted places, we have the town of Goldfield. Founded in 1893, Goldfield was a promising land for gold mining. The town grew rapidly, gaining 1,500 residents during its first year. The space was quick to build businesses including stores, a blacksmith, a butcher, a brewery, and 3 saloons. Though the town of Goldfield met its fall just as quickly quickly as it was built up. After 5 short years, the gold ran out and people began to dwindle, eventually leaving it fully abandoned, securing its ghost town status. Being classified as a ghost town doesn't necessarily mean a place is haunted by ghosts, but this is not the case for the Goldfield Ghost Town. There's plenty of documentation and investigations that point to Goldfield being a paranormal active ground. It is known that a mysterious figure lurks within the shadows of the Goldfield Ghost Town bordello. It is unclear who this spirit would have been in life, yet it is commonly believed he was once a miner who lived in the town. Unexplainable knocks and bangs are heard in the building, and some unfortunate visitors have been scratched. This activity is attributed to a dark character who's usually seen wearing a cowboy hat. Just on the horizon of the Goldfield Ghost Town sits a landscape made ominous by its name and the legend surrounding it. The Superstition Mountains are cloaked in mystery and at the center of many fables, making them notorious among the paranormal community. The Superstition Mountains carry many secrets, the most famous being the location of a supposed deposit of gold and riches in the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. A curse has kept this treasure safe since the days of Goldfield's mining boom. Many have set out to locate these riches, and many have returned empty-handed or found only death. Countless adventurers have perished in the Arizona heat pursuing this chase. Their ghosts are said to now haunt the mountainside. Other secrets of the mountain have people believing that the hill is a place where evil spirits hid and told stories of a devil that lived behind the mountain. There's also a rumored apparition of a hugely tall skeleton named the Borrego Phantom, which appears to those exploring the mountain after dark. Another layer of creepiness is added to the mountain by the local legend that reptile-looking people surface there after dark. All of these creepy mysteries are summed up pretty nicely in the Superstition Mountain's name. In at number 4 we have Glen Rio, New Mexico. Found on the state border of Texas and New Mexico lies the town of Glen Rio. Founded in 1901, it was a town where wheat and cattle farmers settled and grew a community. Being divided between 2 states made for some unusual customs in Glen Rio. The mail would arrive at a train depot on the Texas side, but would have to be transported to the post office on the New Mexico side. The Texas side was part of a dry county, so all the bars were on the New Mexico side. Because the gasoline tax was higher in New Mexico, all the service stations were on the Texas side. By 1920, Glen Rio had a hotel, a hardware store and a land office, as well as several grocery stores, service stations and cafes. Though Glen Rio's permanent population never rose above 30 people, the town survived with its tourist-based businesses catering to the many travelers along Route 66. By 1985, only 2 residents remained in the small town, and the Texas post office was the only business open. It too has long since closed. Other buildings have overgrown sites, missing windows, or debris surrounding them. The detritus of 4 decades when Glen Rio welcomed tens of thousands, fed and entertained them, and sent them on their way towards Chicago or California. In at number 3 we have Nevada City in Montana. Miners settled in Nevada City in 1963, along with establishing their homes and businesses in this new town. Located in southwestern Montana, the town is 1.5 miles from Virginia City. The town was thriving up until 1876 when the gold miners moved to other promising sites. In 1896, the Connery Placer Mining Company destroyed most of the city's buildings. The company dredged the gulch and later abandoned it, leaving heavy wooden barges. This abandoned town being haunted is old news, as the Nevada City Hotel is reported to be frequented by the apparition of a road agent who lost their life nearby, according to online sources. Visitors have also reported hearing footsteps in the hallways and seeing shadowy figures standing behind their reflections in mirrors. Additionally, the spirit of an older cowboy figure who never speaks but lurks in the hotel rooms and even sits at the bar in the Virginia City. Back when the hotel operated, guests also complained of a weeping woman, always in the same room, only to be told there was no guest in the room in question. In at number 2 we have Custer, Idaho. The mining town of Custer was born in 1879 by gold miners looking for their next gold hotspot. Prospectors discovered gold in what would become known as the Yankee Fork area of central Idaho in 1867. The area was worked on a small scale for more than a decade before the discovery of General Custer Mine. The General Custer Mining Company closed in 1888 and the district experienced a sharp decline. In 1899, the town of Custer has 5 saloons, 3 stores, a hotel and 3 boarding houses, but the town never established even one church. By 1910, most of the mines in the area were closed and the Yankee Fork's boom years came to an end. The combined population of Custer and the nearby Bonanza was just 66 people. The Silver Messenger reports just 2 families remaining in Custer in 1911 and then being fully abandoned the year following. Today it has been purchased by the US Forestry Service and, in conjunction with the Friends of Custer Society, is slowly being made into a historic site. Some original buildings have already been renovated, some are in process, and many others are slated to be restored. Several buildings lost in a 1960s grass fire are due to be replaced with replicas. The Forgotten Town is a landmark for many people such as tourists and especially paranormal investigators. In the old schoolhouse is a museum containing items left behind and showcases the town's unique history. Although interesting, you can't help but get an eerie feeling thinking about the people who once owned these items, as walking into one of these structures is like walking back in time. To think this town was once active with human energy and miners working every single day. And finally, in at number 1 we have South Pass City, Wyoming. Only about 10 miles north of the Oregon Trail is the shell of a town that used to be a busy gold mining camp. Established in a small valley along the banks of Willow Creek, the town was born in 1867. The town was built there because gold was discovered in the Wind River Mountains. By 1868, South Pass City boasted over 250 buildings, 1,000 people, and hundreds of claims. The town was extremely busy as its half-a-mile-long main street boasted numerous hotels, restaurants, general stores, 2 newspapers, doctors, a bowling alley, and dozens of saloons. The mining district continued to grow to as many as 3,000 residents. Miners looking for investors and newspapers promoting further settlement in the area exaggerated the region's amount of gold. But for South Pass City, its great success wouldn't last, and just 2 years after its establishment would begin to show its first signs of declining. Hitting a fall in early 1869, the town resurged briefly after outsider capital was poured into the area, but would fall again as expenses and hardships to recover the gold proved too costly for most miners. By 1872, the town was only occupied by only a few hundred people. In the end, South Pass would become a permanent ghost town. By 1949, the last of the pioneer families had moved on from South Pass City, and the buildings had fallen into disrepair. The grounds of the old town are known to be haunted, and Highway 287 that follows the route of the Oregon Trail over South Pass, which is the reason South Pass City ever existed, has had its fair share of ghost sightings. According to a local ghost story, a woman was driving home from a long day in Denver. Her friend had fallen asleep in the passenger seat. After passing through Jeffrey City, the driver spotted a dark, hunched figure walking toward the road in the sagebush. About a half-mile later, she saw the same figure closer to the road. She noted his pig coat as he became clearer. About a half-mile later, still thinking about this man and his surprising reappearance, she reached over to wake her friend and request she take a turn driving. As her friend awoke, she saw the same man at the edge of the road, just crossing the white line onto the highway next to the car. Screaming, they accelerated away and compared descriptions. It was certainly the same man.
Kicking us off at number 5, we have the St. Louis Cemetery, number 1. The first of 3 Roman Catholic cemeteries in New Orleans, this is a legendary site for ghost spotting, although you'll need a vetted tour guide to get in. Break this rule and who knows what kind of curse you'll incur. The cemetery is full of above-ground tombs, which some refer to as cities of the dead. These vaults are largely from the 18th and 19th centuries, although some of the graves date back to early 1700s. Of course, with all sorts of above-ground burials, one would expect to see plenty of ghosts here. Visitors claim to see manifestations of ghosts walking around, and an abundance of amateur photographers claim to have captured ghost orbs on film. Digital too. Some ghosts are more famous than others, but at the St. Louis Cemetery number 1, none are as well renowned as Mary Laveau. The voodoo queen of New Orleans, Laveau made a name for herself through fortune telling, occult studies, and herbal medicines. These days, gawkers claim to see her floating through the cemetery where she's buried, wearing her signature bright colored clothing and white turban. Guests have reported being scratched, pinched, shoved, or even coming down with sudden unexplainable illnesses after seeing her ghost. For many years, followers of the occult would visit her tomb and mark it with 3 X's, but this led to more severe vandalism and it has been refurbished since. Laveau isn't the only ghost to roam the graves, but she is definitely the most well known. Just watch your back if you choose to visit and stick with the tour guide. Next up at number 4, the Hanging Jail. The Gothic Jail of De Ridder was built in 1915. Anything Gothic has a higher chance of being haunted, it's just how architecture works. That's why the Notre Dame is so full of ghosts. That and the whole Cloud Frollo situation. Spirit appreciators in the know believe that the jail is haunted by two men hung for the slaying of a taxi driver. Joe Genna and Moulton Brasseau hired a taxi driver late one night and told him to drive. For reasons still up in the air, they killed him. Not knowing what to do with the body, the two men dumped it in the old Pickering Mill pond and ran off into the night. Maybe they drove off. I wonder if they took the cab. The body was found and traced back to the two would-be on-the-run murderers, and such they were convicted and then hung from the third-floor gallows. The interesting thing about the gallows, though, is that a spiral staircase circles around the noose. So there's a vertigo-inducing set of stairs surrounding the ominously hanging noose. Definitely a ghost creator if I've ever seen one. In addition to this lovely feature, there's also an underground tunnel connecting the jail to the next door courthouse. That is a tunnel you would not want to find yourself in after hours. Who knows what kind of crooked-necked wailing ghosts you find down there. Of course, there are plenty of people who claim to have captured photos of the ill-fated duo along with many other unlucky lawbreakers. Just remember, kids, if you want to be a ghost, constantly do things that you'll regret. That way, you'll have all sorts of reasons to stick around for the afterlife. Coming in at number 3, we have the Dauphine Orleans Hotel. What was once a bordello is now a very popular hotel and bar. Jilted lovers, recovering soldiers, mistreated women, they all have a chance to haunt this New Orleans landmark. Of all the stories, there are 4 that tend to come up no matter who you ask. The first is that of a lost bride, thought to be the spirit of a young woman named Millie. She was working for the bar as a courtesan when she met a dapper young man and they decided to get married. However, on the morning of the wedding, Millie's groom-to-be was shot dead in a gambling dispute. Distraught, Millie waited for days for her fiancé to show up and never took her wedding dress off. For years, she would wear the white dress around the bar, hoping that someday he would show up. Now her ghost wanders the hotel in her dress, waiting for her love. Another classic story is that of the dancing girl. A young teen has been seen dancing around in the ballroom. Many a drunk guest has claimed that a young girl helped them to their room, all the while dancing as if she were floating on air. There's also the tale of the Rebel, a ghost dressed in a dark Confederate uniform. While no battles took place in New Orleans, plenty of wounded soldiers would end up in the city for rest and recovery, and maybe a little bit of time at the bordello. This ghost has been seen pacing the outer courtyard, earning the nickname the Worried General. And of course, the bar itself, known as May's Place, is full to the brim with ghosts. Employees claim to have seen all sorts of unexplainable stuff, from glasses falling down from high shelves to locked doors opening up on their own to brochures swirling around like fall leaves. If you're looking for a haunted overnight stay, the Dauphine Orleans is probably your best bet. Don't go paying any of the ghosts for services though, you probably won't get what you're expecting. Coming in at number 2, Myrtle's Plantation. Built in the late 1700s, this is considered by some to be one of America's most haunted homes. Made extra legendary by the multiple photographs taken featuring ghosts, you'd be hard-pressed to find an ectoplasm enthusiast who hasn't heard of young Chloe. Chloe was a young slave punished for eavesdropping on the family. She took her revenge later on in the form of a poisoned birthday cake. It was served up to the owners of the house, and within 3 hours, 3 people were dead. Apparently that wasn't enough revenge for one lifetime though, as Chloe is still said to haunt the plantation. 2 different pictures have been taken with apparent ghostly qualities to them. One is a photo of the facade of the house, and if you look carefully in the corner, a ghostly visage can be seen. Another is of 2 tourists taking a selfie in front of a window, and Chloe can be seen peering out from in front of the curtains. While famous, some folks claim that they could be doctored. What do you think? After the Chloe incident, many later owners suffered death and murder tragedies while living at the house. Their ghosts have also been seen roaming the grounds. These days, most of the scary stuff is directly ghost related, so I don't know if it's still dangerous or just a spooky tourist attraction. Maybe the spirits like the attention they're getting from the public and would rather not kill anyone else. And finally at number 1, the LEL Mansion. Back in the 1830s, the LEL family was extremely well-to-do, especially Delphine LEL. She was a well-respected member of society and known for throwing lavish parties. All was well and everyone had their fun until disaster struck. A fire swept through the building, burning much of it to the ground. Among the rubble, firefighters found the bodies of chained and tortured slaves in a hidden chamber. It appears that Delphine would perform unnecessary surgery on these poor helpless folks too. By the time all this was figured out, the LELs had fled the country, never to be seen again. With no way for justice to be served, the souls of the people held here remained, looking for revenge. Pretty much all future owners of the property quickly left after moving in. The ghosts haunting the walls are pretty aggressive too, with many people reporting reporting bizarre physical assaults by forces unseen. Today, ghost hunters say that it's the most haunted house in the French Quarter. Historians dispute this, but that's not going to stop the Phantom fans from traveling to the Haunted Mansion.
Coming in at number 5, we have Hotel Park Central. Located on Central Avenue in Albuquerque, you'll find Hotel Park Central. The original building was constructed in 1924 and served as a hospital. It was then purchased in the 1980s and transformed into a mental health hospital. However, in 2010, a major renovation occurred with a $21 million investment, and it became the luxury hotel that we know today. The hauntings in this building date back to the time it served as a hospital. Patients would report seeing apparitions, hearing voices, seeing objects move, and feeling the presence of other beings when nobody was there. As well, when it was a mental hospital, it was known by patients and workers that on the top floor on the right wing, there is a ghost of a woman that likes to watch people in the hallways. Patients also reported having their bedsheets pulled off them in the middle of the night. Patients were not the only ones to experience things that couldn't be explained though. Staff of the hospital did too. They would often have the sensation of being watched, as well as hearing something whisper in their ear, the movement of objects, and a general sense of heaviness throughout the buildings. Today, many guests at the hotel report similar paranormal experiences, as many guests report feeling watched and the presence of unseen beings. They have also reported hearing voices and shuffling in the stairwells. Several guests have also seen a female apparition on the 3rd floor wing. A group of paranormal investigators were brought onto the scene of the hotel. The investigators were 3 team members who all experienced unexplained voices and whispering while close to the hotel. They also reported distinct coolness near their bodies and a sense of being watched. After reviewing their evidence, some of these experiences were captured on digital voice recorders. They also carried out the flashlight technique, an attempt at communication with the spirit that involves the answering of questions through the turning on and off of the flashlight. This was a success, with several responses captured on video. In at number 4, we have the St. James Hotel. Built in 1972 by Henry Lambert, the St. James Hotel was established. Found in Cimarron, New Mexico, the hotel is known to be one of the most haunted places in America. The St. James Hotel is said to remain host to several restless spirits. Both the owners and the hotel guests will tell you that many unexplained events haunt it. Several psychics have visited the hotel and specifically identified 3 spirits and many others who passed through to relive their experiences. The hotel's 2nd floor is the most active, with stories of cold spots and the smell of cigar smoke lingering in the halls. A prior manager commented about the spirits that linger in the hotel and said, "You never see them, but you do feel and hear them." Another report from a former owner states that she walked into the dining room and saw a pleasant looking cowboy standing behind her in the mirror on the front of the bar. The spiritual activity of the hotel has been featured on the popular television show Unsolved Mysteries and A Current Affair. Room 18 at the hotel is kept locked because it houses the ghost of an ill-tempered Thomas James Wright, who lost his life at his door just after winning the rights to the hotel in a poker game. Having been injured from behind, Wright continued into the room and slowly met the end of his life. Because of the tragic accident that happened in room 18, it is known as one of the scariest and most haunted rooms. This can be seen with one former owner who said she was pushed down while in the room, and on another occasion saw a ball of angry orange light floating in the upper corner. The staff considers the room to be the most haunted, and people are rarely allowed to enter this room, much less sleep in it. Rumours abound that when the room was rented, several mysterious deaths occurred there. Other unknown entities are also said to roam the hotel, creating a host of paranormal activities. Staff report that items constantly fall off walls and shelves, and electrical equipment at the front desk behaves unpredictably. Others have reported cold spots throughout the historic inn, lights that seemingly turn on by themselves, feelings of being watched by unseen eyes, and cameras that cease to work inside the hotel, strangely returning to normal after leaving St. James. In at number 3, we have Kymo Theatre. Built in 1927, this grand palace of a theatre certainly is a masterpiece of Pablo Deco fused with Art Deco. The creation of this beautiful southwestern style theatre was financed by a hard-working wealthy entrepreneur, Oreste Bececchi, who wanted to fulfill a lifelong dream of building a grand theatre which would rival other larger-than-life movie palaces that were springing up around the United States. A large fire in 1963 destroyed Kymo Theatre's iconic stage and much of the building, prompting the Bececchi family to demolish it. In 1977, the same year, the theatre was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The citizens of Albuquerque voted to purchase Kymo Theatre at a steep discount. In return, the city of Albuquerque offered to fund the restoration of the landmark attraction. With the change of hands, local restoration experts were hired to restore Kymo Theatre to its former glory. The hauntings of Kymo Theatre can be traced back to a freak accident accident that happened in the late afternoon on August 2nd, 1951. Back then, hundreds of moviegoers were in KYMO Theatre to catch the latest films. Without warning, a water heater located in the theatre's lobby exploded, sending scalding hot steam and plaster into the air. A total of 8 people were injured in the accident, including one person losing their life, Bobby Darnell. Since then, the theatre is said to be haunted by the ghost of Bobby. Performers and staff of KYMO Theatre have all reported strange and unexplainable activities happening in the theatre. In particular, donuts placed backstage for performers would often go missing. To appease the spirit of Bobby, an altar was erected beneath the stairs to the dressing rooms. Toys, sweets and donuts would be placed before every major performance to ensure the success of each show. Those who didn't would face a disastrous performance. KYMO Theatre's technical manager Dennis Potter recounted an incident in December 1986 when the donuts were removed by Andrew Shear, director of A Christmas Carol, just minutes before the first show. It did not take long before the disaster occurred. Electrical cables fell, lights exploded, doors on the set opened without warning, and performers had forgotten their lines. After the end of the disastrous show, the donuts were promptly replaced and the next show went off without a hiccup. However, an interview with Andrew contradicted the Potter's story, with the former claiming that the donuts were never removed or replaced. Apart from the unexplainable disruptions, staff working at KYMO Theatre have also reported seeing the ghost of Bobby, dressed in a striped shirt and blue pants. The ghost of Bobby is often seen loitering on the lobby staircase looking for the next victim of his harmless shenanigans. In at number 2 we have Fonda Hotel. Standing in Santa Fe, New Mexico, there is the historic Fonda Hotel. Over the years, the hotel was destroyed and rebuilt several times over. In 1821, when Captain William Becknell blazed the path of what would become known as the Santa Fe Trail, he stayed at a La Fonda where the trail terminated at the town central plaza. As more and more pioneers traveled the Santa Fe Trail, the La Fonda became a popular destination for trappers, traders, mountain men, soldiers, politicians, and the like. The current La Fonda was built in 1922 on the site of the previous inns. In 1925, it was acquired by the Atchison, Topeka Santa Fe Railroad, which leased it to Fred Harvey. For more than 40 years, from 1926 to 1968, La Fonda was one of the famous Harvey houses, a renowned chain of fine hotels. Today, the La Fonda Hotel is said to host not only travelers visiting Santa Fe, but also several ghosts. Some people believe that the Honorable Judge Slough continues to walk its hallways. However, more often reported is the ghost of the distraught salesman who jumped into the well after losing all of his company's money. The hotel's dining room, called the La Plazuela, is situated directly over the old well, and both guests and staff alike have reported the sight of a ghostly figure that walks to the center of the room, then seemingly jumps into the floor and disappears. Other reported phenomena include a ghost that haunts the Santa Fe room, as well as a spirit that walks the hallways near the La Terraza, a restaurant located on the east side of the hotel's 3rd floor. In the 1970s, a ghost reportedly called the front desk to complain that someone was walking up and down the hallway in front of his room. When an employee was sent to investigate, he saw a tall man in a long black coat disappear into a stairwell. However, when he followed him to the stairs, there was no sign of the mysterious visitor. And finally, in at number 1 we have the Luna Mansion. The Luna Mansion in Los Lunas, New Mexico is known for one thing, and it's its ghost stories. Over the years, the Luna Mansion in Los Lunas has gained a reputation as being haunted. Guests and staff alike have shared stories of unexplained activity, which some chalk up to the paranormal. Over the years, the mansion changed hands several times before it was purchased and renovated as a fine dining establishment in the 1970s. It was then that the ghost of Josephina began to appear. Perhaps she didn't like the renovations, or maybe she just wants to stick around to make sure they were doing a good job on the home that she had spent so many years looking after. Dressed in 1920s period clothing, she had been described by employees as appearing very real. Most often she is seen in 2 former bedrooms on the 2nd floor, an attic, storeroom, and at the top of the stairs leading to the 2nd floor bar. At the top of the stairs sits an old rocking chair, which she has often been seen sitting in and rocking slowly. On one occasion, when an employee approached the ghost, she simply stood up and then slowly vanished. More often she is seen walking up and down the stairs, a habit that has been so commonplace that employees barely notice anymore. Where there's one spirit, others seem to follow, and more ghostly apparitions have been seen at the mansion. One of these is a former servant named Cruz, who was thought to have been a groundskeeper. Most often seen on the main level, he is said to be particularly friendly to women and children and likes to play practical jokes on the employees and patrons. On one occasion, he was seen sitting on a sofa as if waiting to be served. Dressed in vintage attire, the man was relaxing patiently when a waitress asked another staff member why he hadn't been served. However, the response was, "What man?" and when the waitress looked back to the sofa, the vintage spirit faded away. Coming in at 5, West Virginia Penitentiary. Opened all the way back in 1875, the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville is said to be one of the most haunted prisons in the states. The first building constructed on the site was the North Wagon Gate, which was made with hand-cut sandstone. The state used prison labor during the process, and work continued on this first phase up until 1876. Following completion, the prison consisted of the North Wagon Gate, north and south cell blocks, a kitchen, dining area, hospital, and chapel, as well as a 4-story tower connecting the 2 administration buildings. The prison also included space for female inmates and personal living quarters for the warden and his family. Once the prison opened, it housed 251 male inmates, including some who helped construct the prison where they were incarcerated. The condition of the prison worsened throughout the years, and the facility was eventually ranked as one of the top 10 most violent correctional facilities. On Wednesday, November 7, 1979, 15 prisoners escaped from the prison, one of them being Ronald Turney Williams, who was serving time for murdering Sergeant David Lilly of the Beckley Police Department. He managed to steal a guard's weapon and reach the streets, where he encountered 23-year-old off-duty state trooper Philip S. Kesner, who was driving past with his wife. Kesner attempted to take action against Williams, but he was shot in the process. The prison was home to riots, fires, and nearly 100 executions during its time in operation. To this day, visitors have reported sightings of phantom inmates and a shadow man wandering the premises, as well as unexplained voices and cold spots. You can take tours around this haunted penitentiary and even view the electric chair dubbed Old Sparky. For you brave souls out there, you can also do an overnight session if you dare. Coming in at 4, North Bend Rail Trail Tunnel number 19. North Bend Rail Trail is located in Ritchie County in West Virginia and is a favorite for hikers, cyclists, and horseback riders traversing the 72-mile-long trail. However, proceed with caution if you wind up in the area, particularly around tunnel number 19, also known as the Silver Run Tunnel. History goes that on one foggy evening in 1910, an engineer spied a young woman in a flowing white dress standing on the tracks. He brought the train to a stop, but when he searched for the woman, she had vanished. He wasn't the only one to spot her either, many of his predecessors had as well. No one quite knows the origin of the woman in white, although some bones were found under a house near the tunnel. Some people say you can still spot her. Now, those who explore the tunnel are advised to bring a flashlight even during the day, with the tunnel being over 1,376 feet long, which is beyond sunlight's reach. You have been warned. Coming in at 3, Droop Mountain Battlefield. On November 6, 1863, the Battle of Droop Mountain occurred in Pocahontas County, West Virginia during the American Civil War. Confederate forces engaged but failed to prevent Union forces under General W. Averill from a rendezvous with other Federal troops in a joint raid on Confederate railways. Droop Mountain was one of the largest engagements in West Virginia during the war and essentially resulted in the Confederate collapse. The battlefield site is now preserved and administered by West Virginia as a state park, and the unknown Confederate dead are buried in the Confederate Cemetery at Lewisburg. A wooden observation tower, hiking trails, and picnic tables mark the grounds where the Civil War soldiers fought, died, and some say still remain. Many visitors have reported sounds of galloping horses and sightings of the ghosts of headless Confederate soldiers, as well as one soldier lying asleep against a tree. Coming in at 2, Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. In the late 1700s, the Clay family moved to West Virginia, which is presently known as Mercer County. The Clay family, comprised of Mitchell and his wife, settled on an 800-acre farm and raised 14 children. However, in 1783, tragedy struck while Mitchell was out hunting. A few members of the Shawnee tribe killed 2 of the Clay children and burned another at the stake. In retaliation, Mitchell hunted down a handful of Native Americans and killed them. The land in turn became unoccupied for years, up until the early 1900s when Conley T. Snyder purchased the land and built a small amusement park on it. However, the amusement park had just as unfortunate luck as the Clay family. The park featured a Ferris wheel and a swing ride and was popular among locals, particularly families of coal miners who resided in the area. In the early 1950s, a young girl on the swing ride was killed when a truck delivering sodas accidentally backed into the ride, striking her. Another child also drowned in the swimming pool, which was subsequently filled in to prevent further accidents. During its operation, at least 6 people died at the park, which resulted in the park ultimately closing in 1966. In 1985, 1995, Gaylord White, a former employee of the park, purchased the land with plans to reopen it. It happened for a brief period, that is, before the park closed again after a 1988 archaeological dig uncovered numerous Native American artifacts, as well as human remains on the property that had been buried prior to the arrival of the Anglo-European settlers. In total, 13 skeletons were uncovered, mostly of young children. Perhaps the property is cursed, or perhaps it's just a series of unfortunate events. Who knows, but one thing is for sure, it is one of the most haunted places in the entire world. And finally, coming in at number 1, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, also known as the Western State Hospital, was a Kirkbride psychiatric hospital that operated from 1864 to 1994 by the government. Originally built by Richard Andrews, it was constructed from 1858 to 1881 and was originally designed to hold 250 people. However, it became overcrowded in the 1950s, with the hospital housing 2,400 patients, resulting in it being forcibly closed in 1994 due to changes in patient treatment. Following its closure, it was then purchased by Joe Jordan in 2007 and is open for tours and other events to raise money for its restorations. During tours of the facility, witnesses have reported doors slamming, shadowy figures, and even blood-curdling screams from within the building walls. The asylum has garnered such a spooky reputation, it has appeared on shows such as Ghost Stories, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Paranormal Lockdown. It was also featured in Bethesda's 2018 video game Fallout 76 under the name Fort Defiance and acted as a base for the Brotherhood of Steel, one of the game's main factions.